All right, everybody, welcome into episode 159 of Two Countries to America's All Sports here on this December 10th, 2025, 15 days until Christmas. And Christmas has come early if you're a Tennessee Volunteers fan. I'm Nick Olive, as always, from the great state of Tennessee in the city of Chattanooga. And joining me from Rio Branco headquarters in Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil is Gustavo Tomazeli. And guess I know Christmas is coming soon for you too, because it's almost time to play some soccer again.
Yeah, it's almost Tiger time in Americana here. Can't wait. It's 30. We're 36 days away from another season of Rio Branco. I'm definitely excited. Today we actually had episode number 8 of Rio Branco's podcast with the coach and assistant coach. It was really fun, and I have my medal here from our title this year. What a great. Tennessee fans are feeling probably what I felt when Rio Branco finally passed the quarterfinals in the A4. So hopefully they have the same outcome, champions. But Rio Branco is doing good in the preseason, training hard, won their first preseason match against Ferroviária, and definitely things are going good here at Décio Vita Stadium in Rio Branco. Another team which is very happy right now is Botafogo champions, Brazilian champions. They won the South American Championship last week, and now on Sunday they won the Brazilian Championship after choking last year. They did not choke this time, 2-1 versus Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo, they play with the reserves. They have nothing to be incentivized. It's what I tell you guys, and Jason is joining us as well. What I tell you guys in Brazil, when you are playing a team that is facing competition with your rival, there's no help. So Rio Branco São Paulo fans were like, please, São Paulo, it's not the time to win, and they lost 2-1. Botafogo champions. They're gonna play tomorrow the opening match, the opening round of the now it's the Intercontinental Cup, because the FIFA Club World Cup is the one that's going to be played next year in United States of America. So tomorrow, Botafogo and Pachuca. And just to wrap up Brazilian topics in soccer, so also the groups, the groups were defined for the FIFA Club World Cup next year. I think the Americans one, they were not so hard. I'm gonna find the one here. Interesting the matchups. I like Inter Miami Palmeiras. So Group A, Inter Miami, Palmeiras, Porto from Portugal, and Al Ahly from Egypt. Group B, Seattle Sounders, Botafogo, Atletico Madrid, PSG. Group C, Boca Juniors, Benfica, Auckland City, Bayern Munich. Group D, your beloved Chelsea, Jason, Flamengo, Lyon, and Esperance from Tunis. Group E, River Plate, Uriah Ramon Diamonds from Japan, Monterrey from Mexico, and Inter Milan and River Plate from Argentina. Group F, Ulsan, Mamelodi Sundowns, Borussia Dortmund, and Fluminense. And Group G, Juventus, Al Ain, Al Dad AC, and Manchester City. And Group H, Real Madrid, Al Hilal, Pachuca, and Salzburg. And Jason, how you're feeling in terms of this FIFA Club World Cup? I know, Europeans, they are not so excited about. They are, thinking about even how to get away from this. They are even mad with FIFA, but it's a big competition. It's the best teams in the world from their each continent playing in the same tournament, and Chelsea will be there.
My primary issue with this tournament is that the American champions Columbus Crew did not get to go, whereas CONCACAF and FIFA rigged it so that Inter Messi can go, and I think that is disgraceful, quite frankly. That
I agree 100%.
the Major League Soccer champions aren't even going to get to go because they wanted to handpick Messi and friends. So in that, in the view of an American, I think that's just garbage. But from a Chelsea supporter standpoint, I'm very excited. I hope to be able to make it to one of the matches. A couple friends and I were actually talking today about potentially going next summer. I mean, I think it's going to be an amazing tournament, even if some of these teams don't field full squads. I think it's going to be a great tournament, and
and for the Brazilian standpoints, they're gonna go full squad. I mean, for example, the biggest I think pressure is if Palmeiras, because Palmeiras never won. For all the failures, the 2 times they failed in the FIFA Club World Cup 2020, 2021. All the rivals have this title. Palmeiras do not have. So I think in the Brazilian standpoint, Palmeiras have the most pressure to win. And I think the team that has, the potential to surprise is Botafogo, because Botafogo is on a rise. They just won Libertadores. They just won the Brazilian Championship. They have no pressure to win the FIFA Club World Cup because, their fans, they're just happy to win those tournaments because their last big titles in 1995, the Brazilian Championship, and they never won Libertadores. So they are just happy to be there. So I think in the Brazilian kind of standpoint, those are kind of my analysis. I think Flamengo is going to be with a good team. Fluminense, I think, is going to be the one that I think is going to do the worst because they saved from relegation literally on the last week. Their Thiago Silva was emotional. I don't know if you saw this, Jason. He crossed the field with his knees after the game because he was so emotional because he didn't want come back to Fluminense, his childhood team, the team that he started professionally, and be a part of a relegation team. So he was very emotional.
I think too, for all the Brazilian teams, this being in America, the prelude to the World Cup, I also think too that's a chance for them to just get their brands more on the international stage as well. Because I think more Americans will be tuned into this, because of this. Like I've never really watched her before. I'll definitely be tuned in. Jason, so the first Chelsea match, June 16th, is in Atlanta. So.
That is one that some of my friends and I are potentially going to, and so I'll be excited for that. A friend of mine from England may also be coming over for this tournament, so that'll be fun as well.
Absolutely, it's going to be a very exciting.
The match that I wish I could go is Inter Miami Palmeiras for sure. That's the match I wish I could go, but I might not be able to because be working here at Rio Branco. But I told my dad, please, it's a 3-hour drive to see at least Messi playing against Palmeiras, so it's a lot of fun as well. So
who is on Al Ali? That's not Ronaldo's team, right?
No, I think that's in Egypt. That's an Egyptian team. They're really good. They won a bunch of African Champions League, so they are really good down there. And shout out to my big friend and Rio Branco analyst, Rafael Delevedove, saying Saquon MVP. We're going to talk definitely NFL later because right now we're going to have to talk about CFB.
Absolutely, going into the CFP. Also, just to wrap up soccer real quick, shout out to LA Galaxy for winning the MLS Cup. So there you go. Didn't really watch the game.
Shout out to Marco Royce, first major trophy.
I saw that, I just couldn't believe it.
He spent so many years at the top of his game. He spent his entire club career at Borussia Dortmund. Was never won the Bundesliga there, never won the Champions League with them, although he came very close to both. Didn't even win the World Cup with Germany. He got hurt like 2 weeks before the World Cup. He didn't even get to win that with his teammates. And so very long time coming for one of the legends of the game, Marco Royce.
So I guess now former Tottenham striker now in Bayern Munich has to come to United States, I guess.
Harry Kane to LA Galaxy.
Harry Kane has to come to US.
I did not know he was at the LA Galaxy. See, this is how little I pay attention to the MLS. So
nobody would blame you.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, just acknowledging it. Now we don't have to acknowledge the MLS for months. But let's acknowledge to a sport that people do actually care about and talk about, and that is college football. So just before we get diving, I just want to shout out Vols are on right now, number 1 team in the country, playing Miami. Things have tightened up just a little bit. Miami on a 7-0 run, 59-49 with a little under 8 to go. Hopefully the boys kind of tighten up and finish that one out. But let's talk about the college football playoffs. They were finally set. We were all watching it together at like 12:30 on Sunday afternoon. And we've been talking about this for years, thinking about what the 12-team playoff would look like. And we now know what we've got. So I'm going to pull up. That's actually a pick, so I don't want to pick that up. So we know what this looks like. And it's just surreal because I remember when we were in Florida and we were talking about what we were looking forward to heading into this year is the 12-team college football playoff and how we were heading into a new world of college football. And there it is. We have our first bracket. So I'll tell you, Jason, you look at this bracket, what is your first reaction?
My first reaction is, oh my God, this system is broken already. It has taken one bracket. And it's not even like it's not even like it's something that people haven't expected. But seeing Boise State and Arizona State above all of these good teams from the SEC and Big Ten, specifically Texas and Ohio State, who both have some question marks, but I think anybody would consider both to be better than those two. And then Penn State, I think, same. Tennessee, probably same. I don't understand what the incentive is here for the auto bids to get the first round bye, other than this was how the other conferences demanded it. But now we're here because we had to concede whatever. So
For me, I'll add to your point. How about like the ACC champion be ranked below the second place ACC conference and getting in? That doesn't make any sense. Like, the champion of the conference is below the team they beat in the conference championship.
I don't really mind that as much because SMU, top to bottom, had a pretty good season, whereas Clemson caught fire at the end. Clemson doesn't deserve to be ranked over them. I 100% expected them to be because I expected Alabama to be in and not Southern Methodist. But at the end of the day, I don't hate it, I don't love it, but I don't think there's anything that you can really change to make that better, in my view.
Right. And one thing I want to reference is because I've been doing weekly brackets on TikTok. I'm trying to share this that I made back in September because I think this is because it just goes to show how inevitable this was. So if you'll pull that up, Gus, I made this after week 4, I believe. So this would have been after the Tennessee-Oklahoma game. So compare what this bracket looked like.
LOL number 10.
Missouri, before they had lost any games. And then really they were just there as a pity pick until they lost. But there's a couple of different things. So look at the 9-1, the 8 and the 9 seeds. Yeah, and I hear that too. The 1, the 8, and the 9 seeds. Look how hard that top is right there. Meanwhile, look at the 5 seed with Georgia and how relative to the UNLV and freaking Utah. Utah didn't even make a bowl game.
See, the 5 seed has the way it's set up incentivizes the 5 seed because no, they don't get a bye, but they play the group of 5 champion and then the Big 12 or ACC champion that got onto number 4. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. That's basically how that just got worked out. And I don't understand how this format can keep going in the way that it is.
No,
I don't see it.
especially before the SEC basically revolts, because not only did the SEC have 3 teams in Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina get left out here, it's, now you have, one of them that yes gets the bye. You get one with a home game, but then you have Tennessee, who in another bracket would be having a home game. They're having to travel to Ohio State. So it's just, this bracket screws over the SEC completely. Now, so other people can say that, well, the SEC shouldn't have beaten each other up. But at the same time, the SEC just has much stronger teams than every other conference. Our 6-6 and 7-5 teams are different than your 6-6 and 7-5 teams. The Arkansas, the Oklahomas, the Vanderbilts of the world are so much better than like Nebraska.
I think this format of the playoff would make sense maybe 2010, 2011, where you had
exactly where I was going.
4 really good conferences. They have the Auburn, the USCs, the Texas. The power was balanced, and now it's not balanced anymore. Arizona State, Boise State, and Clemson, they got in because of politics, not because of deserving.
Well, Boise State would have been in regardless, but they shouldn't be the 3 seed.
No.
I don't mind them being in, not at all.
Yeah.
They do not deserve an auto bye to the quarterfinal, and neither does Arizona State. I'm sorry.
Well, in a fair system, Arizona State and Clemson won't even be in, probably.
Yeah, that's my point. That's my point.
I think this is the prelude to one of 2 things, guys. I think first and foremost, this is going to be the beginning of the Big Ten and the SEC creating their own joint playoff, which wouldn't be that outlandish considering that we expect, or at least I expect, I don't know if I speak for you guys as well, but I tend to expect they're going to keep absorbing teams, and eventually they're going to have divisions in the conference that resemble the old conferences to a degree. So, the Big Ten will keep adding the Pac-12 type schools. They'll absorb more of the California schools, maybe Washington State and Oregon State, and they'll end up with the Big Ten West, which semi-resembles the old Pac-12. And then the SEC will keep absorbing the old Big 12 schools. And then eventually the SEC Western Division will be what used to be like the Big 12. And when that happens, I think this format is going to be fine, this Big Ten SEC only tournament. Now, the other consideration is, okay, if you don't do that, then I think you have to go to 16 teams and then I don't think you can have any buys. I think a straight 16 team bracket, give the 5 auto bids. I don't care, but let them be in whatever order. No 1 to 4 seeds or conference champion crap, and just go all at large and then rank them how you see fit. The Big Ten and the SEC champions are going to be number 1 and number 2 every year anyway. So what does it matter? They're already going to be locked into those 1 and 2 seeds.
Yeah, and here's the deal, though. When you think about these conferences, right? Like the ACC and the Big 12 just saw what happened to the Pac-12. The Pac-12 was murdered last year. It is gone. At least they're trying to rebuild themselves, but they're just going to be a glorified Mountain West Conference. So, yeah, if you're the ACC and Big 12, yeah, you're fighting to keep the title bids in because that's the only way you keep your league alive. But the SEC and the Big 10 are just going to be so much more powerful that you're right. I think the Big 10 and the SEC are going to ultimately absorb these teams.
I'll tell you what. I think when Clemson and Florida State get out of the ACC and join the SEC, that's the beginning of the end for the ACC. And eventually, Big 12 is going to follow soon because there's the discrepancy is real. The discrepancy between the SEC and the Big 10 compared to the ACC and Big 12 is enormous. It's something I think college football never seen before. The discrepancy of 2 conferences compared to other 2 conferences in the Power 4. Now that we don't have the Power 5 because, Pac-12 was, as Nick said, murdered.
Yeah, and here's the thing with the ACC. The thing with the ACC is the grant of rights deal that expires in 2036 is quite powerful. It's not airtight, though. And basically, the TLDR is you have to buy out yourself, your school, from that grant of rights, and then you owe your TV money to the conference, to the ACC, from any new conference for the next however many years until 2036. And so that's 12 years right now. But we're coming to a point, a couple years ago when this conference realignment really ramped up for the first time, when Texas and Oklahoma were the first ones to join the SEC a couple years in the future. At that time, that was unthinkable. But we are getting to a point where there may be a crossover here where it may be worth it for these guys to go ahead and bolt. And when they do, Gus, to your point, that's going to be the death of the ACC. But it's going to be the death of all the conferences because the Big 12 is just surviving on adding former Group of 5 teams also. And then the ACC hasn't added any former Group of 5 teams other than Louisville, which happened, 10 years ago at this point. So Louisville's firmly into the Power 5, having been a national champion in basketball, having been to the College World Series several times, and having won a New Year's Six bowl game in that time. But the Big 12 is adding Cincinnati, adding UCF, BYU, all of these former Group of 5 schools. And then the ACC is adding in all the former Pac-12 schools. But when the Big 10 comes calling and says, hey, we want to add Cal, Stanford, okay, well, they're going to go. And then the SEC will come calling and add SMU, and they're going to add the Texas schools. Well, eventually, it's going to shake out the way of the old Big 12 and the old ACC.
Clemson and Florida State going to go first. You know that. If it was
or Miami.
Well, are they?
Or Miami. I think it's going to be one of those three will go first. And I think Miami to the Big 10 makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. Miami to the Big 10 and Clemson and Florida State to the SEC.
I can get behind that. And the thing about Miami, for those that don't understand why I would say such a thing, because geographically it makes no sense.
Geography went out the window a long time ago.
That's true. But even considering that, I think it's going to geographically still resemble the old conferences when it all shakes out at the end of the day. Miami to the Big 10 makes sense because it, one, gives them a TV market that they don't have, and it wouldn't compete with Florida and Florida State, who are both going to be in the SEC probably. And then secondarily, their academics are super, super high standards. And that's something that matches the Big 10. And so I think that's a match for all parties. And then I think the same thing for like Duke, North Carolina, Virginia to the Big 10 as well, for those reasons when the ACC eventually does collapse. That's, I believe, where it's going, truly. And then it's going to be a scramble for everybody else to figure out where they're going or get left behind.
I just want to say, too, like, we look at the FCS with their 2014 playoff, and
it's electric.
I have thought about what would a 2014 playoff in FBS look like, and that's the problem. Look at that B, these bowls. I think we now have to firmly acknowledge that bowl games are useless, completely useless. Outside the NY6, and the only reason why the NY6 are relevant is because they are playoff games.
They weren't relevant for a while.
Exactly. So either as a bowl game you're relevant, or do you really even deserve the right to exist? And we say this as we all went to the Citrus Bowl last year. We all had a great time doing it, and it meant a lot to us to go to that game. But let's be real. In this era now where everything's about the playoffs, and maybe we should talk about whether or not have we done right by college football to put the sport in this spot. But the fact of the matter is, it's playoffs or bust now. So what's the point of the other bowl games? I have a question about are there any other bowl games even worth watching that aren't the playoffs?
And it's interesting that when this 12-team playoff came in, I thought the quarterfinal, the first round somehow is gonna get put as a bowl game, but to their credit, it didn't. Thank God they put these games on campus sites where there's going to be an electric atmosphere, where fans are going to feel the first time experience in Columbus, in state, in Indiana, in Pennsylvania, in Texas, in Ohio, feeling finally a game that is literally do or die with their fan base. I cannot wait to see college stadiums finally having playoff games in college football.
Oh, it's going to be electric. And then on the contrary to that, Gus, you have these bowl games that players have been opting out of for 8 or 10 years now. And then now you have the transfer portal where kids are entering the portal before they even go to the playoff. And I think the problem with that is obvious. You have two glaring issues with there's Tennessee players that have entered the portal and won't be playing in the playoff. And I think that's ridiculous. But I don't think it's their fault. They're doing what they have to do for themselves. I think the system needs changed, and I think the transfer portal needs to open after the end of the season. And now that makes it a little difficult considering they want to be on campus for the spring semester wherever they're going. And so I don't know how to fix that. But
yeah, Lane Kiffin, he made a comment. Normally I wouldn't give Lane Kiffin credit, but he did say that we're just trying to make the best of the situations. It is really a dumb system. Think about what we're talking about, what DS just had to address, a quarterback going into the portal. Think about what we were talking about. The season's not over yet, and there's a free agency window open, end quote, because of the situation that's ongoing.
Yeah, and everything that has been done in theory is a good idea. But when you start to mix all of this stuff together, you have problems. And it's going to take a while to shake out. And I don't act like I have the answers. But, the portal window needs to open after the season. But it also needs to give these kids an opportunity to find somewhere to go in the meantime before the spring semester.
They got to decide whether or not how much they really want academics mixed up with this, because, if you're going to actually give these,
in a real world, you don't.
Yeah, I would agree. There has to be a way to balance that with the fact now with NIL, these are athletes making business decisions, and for a lot of athletes, most athletes don't make it to the NFL. This is their shot to make money off of their talents.
And I think it's great, personally. I think it's well-deserved. But, there's always going to be people who are complaining that, okay, well, Florida has or Texas has more money than everybody else, and they're just going to go buy the best players. And that may be true.
Let's say, in terms of, I love that we're picking up the transfer portal while Chaz Lanier is winning us the game in basketball. So God bless the transfer portal.
But Jason, literally, you're describing right now what soccer is. Premier League teams have the most money and buy the players, even with Portuguese leagues, with the Portuguese teams, Spanish teams, Dutch teams. College football is starting to resemble European soccer.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a bad thing either. I was just having this debate earlier about the New York Mets signing Juan Soto for $750 million. I don't think there should be a salary cap in any of the leagues in America. I think salary caps are, I think they're counterproductive because these big time deals help players, but they also, if they're not done correctly, shackle the teams that sign them. And I think college football is going to be just the same, especially considering that schools can now directly pay players. If you go and sign somebody for a ridiculous amount of money that's not any good, that's the same as signing Juan Soto and him getting hurt. I don't see a problem with it. And honestly, I think that makes the parity better when you have the opportunity to do that. I think the parity gets better by default.
And to your point, Jason, I think a salary cap is just weird because America is such a capitalist country, and salary cap is a little bit socialism in sports. Not to get political,
100%. 100%. And
I'll say this though, but the most popular sport in America is the NFL, and it has thrived on the salary cap.
Yeah,
like MLB ratings have fallen off a cliff.
But the ratings haven't fallen because of the salary cap. Let's be real. The ratings have fallen because it's impossible to watch games locally. Rob Manfred's fucking around with the game and trying to implement rules that don't make any sense. That's why.
No,
it's not because of the salary cap or the lack of.
It's a lack of big games. I mean, the ratings went through the roof when the Yankees and the Dodgers banned the World Series because we're two big brands fighting in the playoff. But it's 162 games in long season. Maybe it used to make sense in the 70s and 80s where there's not much entertainment options, back then. But now there's so many entertainment options where people are like, does this game matter? No, I'm not gonna watch. That's the decision.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing the same thing with the NBA. And I think that's a big reason why. Football is a game of limited games, and you can only play so many without getting people hurt. Baseball and basketball, and to an extent hockey, but much less so hockey, they just keep adding games and adding games and adding games, and it's made all of the games in the middle of the summer, in baseball's case, or in the middle of the winter in basketball's case, meaningless. The game that I went to in Chicago, the Pacer game, that in the big picture means nothing. It was fun, and I had a great time. But in the standings, in the big picture, it means next to nothing. And that's, I 100% agree. That is the problem. And that's another reason why the NFL is so popular, even though the NFL is trying to do the same thing by, cutting the preseason and making it into a regular season game. But NFL games matter a lot more, even if you have 18 games. They matter because there's only that many. There's not 82. There's not 162.
Right, and this is the argument I've been hearing from people like Josh Bay, who say that the playoff has made the college football regular season mean less, arguing that teams with free losses have a chance to get into the
Hell no, it made every game mean way more.
Way more. And no, what I love about this new format is the bull crap of I can't schedule hard games because one loss done the season. No, it's the opposite.
Well, okay, so this is a good segue into Alabama because I'm sure everyone knows by now, SMU was
put in instead of
Alabama. Yes. Sorry, I just got a call. Just trying to get back. Where did you go? There we go. Yeah. So when I get phone calls, they go straight to my computer. Anyway. Okay, let me reset. So SMU got picked over Alabama, and man, the reaction. So I was watching with my dad. I was watching with you on the phone. I couldn't believe it. I did not believe that SMU would get chosen over Alabama. I just thought they were going to do the same exact thing that they did last year and keep them out for like they did Florida State. And it was it was one of the craziest things to see live.
I agree with you, Nick, because when our group chat we're discussing, hey, I thought Bama was gonna get in because I thought the committee is gonna use the same logic they used last year. An SEC team with more losses than the ACC team is gonna get in with the big brand. That's what my logic was. But I guess college football playoff committee threw the logic out the window. They're like, we don't care. Let's put the team with the fewer losses. I cannot even imagine how the Florida State fans are feeling right now. They might be feeling at the same time revenge and even more angry.
Right. And obviously, Florida State, lost Jordan Travis, and that was part of the decision to keep Florida State out because...
Oh, it wasn't part, Nick. It was not part. It was the entire decision.
That's the bull crap.
People have been bringing up Georgia and losing Carson Beck, and here's the difference, all right? Carson Beck on Georgia is great, but this other kid, whatever this number 14...
Oh, Gunnar Stockton?
That guy. He makes them better. Whereas Florida State looked like a high school team without Jordan Travis. That's the difference. Let's not act like Tate Rodemaker was the savior. Everybody says, oh, Tate Rodemaker, this and that was fine. Sure, he was fine, and he's better than DJ Uiagalelei, but that bar is not exactly high to pass.
Yeah. Maybe Tate Rodemaker would have taken Florida State to 4 wins this year instead of 2. But less on teams that couldn't win more than 2 games. But this Alabama SMU deal, and Bama fans, Nick Saban immediately said it. Teams should seriously stop scheduling tough out of conference games after Bama was kept out. Which there's a couple of problems with that. One, Bama didn't lose any of the out of conference games. They didn't have a hard out of conference schedule. They had South Florida and at Wisconsin, the Wisconsin team that didn't make a bowl game. So that's not exactly murderer's row in the non-con. The reason why Bama's not in is because you lost to both Vanderbilt and Oklahoma, who are both 6-6. That's why you lost. You get one of those. Like Tennessee lost at 6-6 Arkansas, and they got in because they only dropped one of those games. Bama dropped 2 of those, and that's why Bama is going to the ReliaQuest Bowl, and why Tennessee is going to Ohio for a playoff game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that hard to understand. The problem that I have is not with what was said about that, because I actually agree with that. There is no incentive for a strong non-conference schedule. There's no reason to schedule, non-FCS teams in those games. However, I think the committee did what they had to do by not making conference championship games elimination games, because the thing that I kept seeing was SMU should boycott the game and forfeit, because then they didn't lose on the field. Make the committee make the decision. And they ended up playing and they lost, but it didn't get held against them. And I think that was important to the committee. But as usual, the committee keeps moving the goalposts. And, they said, conference championships are rewarded. And then, TCU won the Big 12 conference championship in 2014, the first year of the 4-team playoff. Going into conference championship weekend, guys, they were ranked number 3 in the country. They won by 52 points and dropped to number 6 because they didn't have a championship game. The Big 12 didn't have a championship game. They just awarded the championship outright to TCU, who played another conference game during conference championship week. And then the committee said, oh, well, we meant conference championship games, not just conference championships. What sense does that make? You keep moving the goalposts. And then with that said, the committee got away with it because they put Ohio State in at number 4, who ended up winning the whole tournament in 2014. And they got away with it, and nobody said anything about it because Ohio State won it. But they've been moving the goalposts from day one. I have been a big believer, and you guys know this, but anybody watching may not know this. The BCS was never the problem. I have been a firm believer in the BCS was never the problem since people started saying, oh, we want the eye test. Boise State in 2007 needed to be able to get in because of the eye test. We don't need an eye test. Nobody needed an eye test. You needed a playoff with more than 2 teams playing for the championship. If you had a 12-team or a 16-team playoff with the BCS rankings, nobody would have a problem because the BCS actually made sense. You don't need the eye test if you can put more than 2 teams into the championship picture, period. That's the end of the story for me. You people wanted the eye test, and now you're complaining about the eye test.
Because I think the BCS, and you guys know more about this than I do because I didn't follow college football back then, but from what I study, BCS was a computer-based ranking, totally non-human bias, was purely straight numbers. And now when we put humans to decide teams, of course there's going to be argument for bias or why they put this team, or because it's human, not computer.
So I have put up what apparently would be the simulated BCS compared to what the committee came up with. So you can see Notre Dame is all the way up at 3. Tennessee's at the same spot. Ohio State would be ahead of Penn State, which probably should have happened, frankly, because Ohio State beat Penn State on the road. So, I mean, how does that work? That Penn State gets to be 2 spots.
But Penn State took care of business and made it to the championship game despite losing head-to-head.
Beating like Maryland and like some really bad
Illinois.
teams.
Okay, but Ohio State couldn't beat a really bad Michigan team.
Yeah, but true. I don't know. But Ohio State also beat Indiana, which is also in the top 10. So I don't know. It's certainly, when looking at it, like Arizona State is up 2 spots from what the committee has them, and SMU is 2 spots below what the committee has them. So it's just really interesting.
But the 12 teams look the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess Clemson's the only team that is out in the BCS that it's in the college football playoff committee, from what I can see.
Yeah, they switched Clemson for Alabama, but the teams pretty well look the same. It's actually not as bad as I thought it was going to be honest with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, really the big difference is Bama and SMU are reversed in the BCS, but at the same time, you can't lose those two, Vanderbilt and Oklahoma, and get it. And like for Ole Miss, you can't lose to Kentucky at home.
And to Florida as well, even though it was on the road. It's like the Florida game and Kentucky is kind of like Oklahoma and Vandy, both, And if to that argument, South Carolina has better losses than Alabama and Ole Miss, if you really, really want to compare losses.
Right, but then you have to, for all the people that were screaming about South Carolina, okay, so what's their good wins? What are the best wins for South Carolina? Are we talking about an unranked Texas A&M team? Are we talking about a mid-teens on the road Clemson? Are we talking about, really think about South Carolina's.
That's why I think the committee did not want to put Alabama in, because then the other 2 SEC teams have arguments. Of course, the South Carolina one's like, oh, our losses were, with the better teams than Bama. And Bama will be like, oh, but we have better wins than you do. It'd be a point finger.
Well, some people are saying basically the committee should have made the LSU result from week 3 null and void because of the referees. But then there's like a million other games that you could go back and say, well, the ref screwed this up and this up, so we can't really acknowledge the result of the game. And committees, we should not be giving committees that power to null and void.
But then you question the legitimacy of the Southeastern Conference referees. And then you open the Pandora's box that what's next? Any team is going to cry foul and is going to say, oh, no, that game because of referee. You can't do that. You can, improve refereeing, but you can't do that because then you open a Pandora's box that what's next?
Yeah, it's hard, especially when it's a subjective system like this. Because most other leagues are, objective, right? Like you have to get a certain record to get into the playoffs. You have to win your division in the NFL, or be in the top 8 in the NFL, or the NBA and the NHL to get the playoff. College football is a little bit different, and it is what it is. We have the bracket that we have. So I don't want to pick games right now, but I do want to just, I guess, go through and kind of look at where different teams are positioned. First, I kind of want to start off with number 1 Oregon here. Only undefeated team in the country. And I think it's been well stated that they got screwed with this draw. Like, there are several other teams, especially Texas and Penn State and Georgia, to me, that have far better draws than Oregon. Oregon, in theory, is going to have to be either Ohio State or Tennessee in the Rose Bowl. Then I would guess Texas in the semi, and then probably face, we'll see who they get in the Natty if they get that far. But I mean, Georgia would be the overwhelming favorite, I think, in the bottom half of the bracket. I mean, man, like
But-
if you.
But Nick, we talked about this last week that we all knew that the loser of the Big Ten championship would be, benefiting in a better drawing. We all knew that. It wasn't a surprise.
Oh yeah, it definitely wasn't. Which is why I floated the idea. If I was Oregon, I would have intentionally lost the game. And people were calling me crazy. I was telling my friends last week, look, if I were Oregon, I would intentionally lose this game. And they decided not to do that. And instead of getting to play like Arizona State in round 2, they're going to have to play Ohio State or Tennessee. So, I mean, yeah, you get the 1 seed, but at what cost? Meanwhile, as I said, Penn State has won no big games all year, lost the Big Ten championship, lost to Ohio State. But they still get to be ranked ahead of Ohio State, and they get SMU at home and then Boise State. I mean, it's not a fair system. Or Texas getting Clemson and Arizona State. Or
don't sleep on Clemson against Texas, though. I'm not gonna call upset alert too quickly here, but don't sleep on that game. That 5-12 game. We may see the curse of March Madness make its way into this college football playoff.
We could, and that's another one to ask. So we have 4 home coaches here, right? We got Ryan Day, Steve Sarkisian, James Franklin, Marcus Freeman. To me, I think all of these coaches face some sort of pressure in this. Like the consequences of losing this first round game at home, I think would be detrimental to catastrophic for these coaches.
For Ryan Day, I think it's cataclysmic.
Yeah. I think I would argue it'd be the same for James Franklin, too. If Franklin loses at home to SMU, or if Marcus Freeman loses at home to Indiana, I think either one of those losses would be cataclysmic.
I think,
yeah, but they don't have a 5-year running 0-5 record against their biggest rival, even when Michigan is really, really bad.
Yeah,
We're gonna say, Gus.
I was gonna say I think Steve Sarkisian, even though upsets can happen, and Jason said to don't sleep on it, and I truly believe because Clemson is the more experienced team in the playoff, than Texas. But I don't think Steve Sarkisian is gonna get fired because we all acknowledge that when he took over, Texas wasn't even remotely close of being this good. With the Tom Herman years, Texas is back rhetoric, but getting very mediocre. So I think he's safe. But Ryan Day, if he loses, he's gonna get fired. He's gonna get fired because Columbus. I mean, think about it. The games in Columbus and Ohio State fans are still on their minds on their Michigan game. So they're not gonna be. Of course, the crowd's gonna be electric, but the patience of Ohio State fans are not the same as it was before the Michigan game.
See, and this is why I love this spot for Tennessee personally. Like, I would have loved to have a game in Neyland. Like, I think we all would. A Neyland playoff game, especially tonight, would have been just amazing. Would have brought tears to my eyes. But if we had to go on the road, give it with any circumstances, if we can somehow jump out early on Ohio State, get that crowd to turn against the Buckeyes, it would be a very uncomfortable situation for Ohio State.
Y'all ready to go to the horseshoe? Because I am.
I'm so ready for the horseshoe. I have wanted to play.
I'm
Ohio
so
State
jealous of you guys. I'm so jealous of you guys because I've been to the horseshoe for soccer, but I know how that environment is different. And like Chiboyan guys, I think what Tennessee has to do is what Michigan did, which is making Ohio State offense uncomfortable. And now, if they do that, the crowd is not going to have the same patience as they did with the Michigan game, because before it was like, okay, it's a rivalry. We're going to turn up the second half. Now it's like, okay, here go again.
I think if Ohio State doesn't score in the first, 2 drives or so, and Tennessee scores at all, you're going to hear booing.
Yeah. And you have to ask what the mindset's going to be here, because Ryan Day in the Michigan game, they were like, okay, we want to big boy Michigan. We're going to try to run the ball down their throat, and they were unable to. Weren't able to do it, and they weren't able to get the passing game going to compensate because Will Howard is not that great of a quarterback. How does he approach Heupel? He mentioned in the press conference that he, quote, wants to end Josh Heupel's style of offense, as verbatim what he said in a press conference. And so that, quote, he wants this game to be a, quote, tune-up for the rest of the playoffs, which are dangerous words, I feel like, for him to say, especially after losing to Michigan.
It's words of a coach who knows he's screwed, that he needs to find somehow a confidence that he deep down he does not have.
Absolutely. 100%, Gus, you nailed it on the head. That's exactly how I was feeling about it. And he is, he knows that he is facing an uphill battle. He has talked about Josh Heupel's offense before. He knows that he doesn't have an offense capable of keeping up. And he knows that Tennessee's defense is strong. You have 2 of the best defensive players in the country in Jermod McCoy and James Pierce. So good luck. Will Howard's not even good throwing the football. And you're putting Jermod McCoy out there too. You can see that's the bonus of having a guy like Jermod McCoy. You can throw him on an island and throw an extra guy into the box. You're not running. Even with Judkins and Henderson, you're not running on this Tennessee defensive line. Not effectively enough, at least.
See, that's the next question. Who do we put McCoy on? Do we put him on Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Emeka Abuga? Which one? Because those receivers are good. Which one of them do you specialize McCoy on throughout this matchup?
My gut reaction is Emeka Egbuka.
I would agree. Although Jeremiah Smith, I think, is the most dynamic. He reminds me a lot of Ryan Williams at Bama. And McCoy did a great job on Ryan Williams.
Future Tennessee Vol Ryan Williams.
Yes, please. Please, come to Knoxville. There's a lot of players I want to come to Knoxville. Jokingly, it feels like I have a whole Christmas wish list of transfer portal players at this point. But yeah, and then also, there's also been this whole discussion about, these Southern teams going up north to play cold games. So like Tennessee going to Ohio State or SMU going to Penn State. But like, it's been cold in Tennessee over the past couple of weeks, guys. Like, it's not been like cold, but well, for us, it's been cold.
I mean, those exact same players are going to go to the NFL. Are they not going to play cold weather games when they play for teams up the south? No. Yeah. So I mean, they're grown ups. It's so so back like it's such a like a mindset of the 80s. Like, it's cold. Like, let's face it, the 21st century. You play where you have to play.
Oh boy, I have some comments here. So take it from me, your resident Midwestern guy. It gets cold here. It does. It gets cold in Tennessee, but it gets way colder here. Nick, you and I were having this conversation not too long ago. I think those conversations are legitimate. I think, sure, it is a legitimate concern to be going up to the Midwest to play in potentially cold and crappy conditions. With that said, I don't think it matters that much. It is a consideration, and it is a real thing. But at the end of the day, our players are going to have a heater on the sideline because we're not going to, our team is not going to rely on Ohio State to supply us a heater. No shot. They're going to bring their own, and they're going to plug it in on the sideline. They're going to bring jackets like coats and stuff, to keep everybody warm if it's going to be really cold. And sure, the players will walk out of the tunnel and be like, ooh, it's cold. And then about 2 minutes into the game, the adrenaline's going to be pumping, and they're not going to realize it anyway. And when they go back to the sideline, they're going to put on their coat and stand next to the heater. It'll be fine. The weather comments are legitimate because it does get significantly colder here than it does in Tennessee. But it's not going to matter in a football game. I truly, in my heart, do not believe that because of what I just said. Tennessee football is going to show up with heaters, jackets, whatever needs to happen. And same thing with SMU. And these guys are going to have plenty of stuff that's warm because they know better than to try to rely on the home team, because the home team will conveniently turn the power off. They'll conveniently make all the water in the showers cold and do all the gamesmanship crap that you see, in all the other leagues. And Gus, I'm sure you see a lot of that in Brazil.
I face it in some Bronco games. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, but you know as well as anybody, Gus, your team has to be prepared to cover itself in those situations. Tennessee football is not run by idiots. Okay, Danny White's not an idiot. Josh Heupel is not an idiot. They're going to be showing up. I guarantee you, as soon as the bracket came out on Sunday, Danny White's on the phone with somebody ordering some heaters for this football team and ordering a bunch of coats. I guarantee you, it's really that simple. This doesn't need to be as big of a thing as it's becoming. Sure, it's a legitimate concern, but there are ways to alleviate that concern. It's really that's really it for me.
And to your point, Jason, I think the biggest point is that if you wanted to play in a better environment, you should have played in a regular season better. That's, I think, the whole point of the regular season still matter, is that you have the home field advantage, and literally now is an advantage now, not just because of the the fan environment, but also the weather environment.
I mean, how much warmer would it be in Knoxville though for this game? Like it would
probably be in the 40s in Knox, and it can get down into the teens and even the single digits in Columbus if it's a windy enough night.
But if you're getting to your point, so January football in the NFL should not be played because that the playoffs in the NFL are filled with so many down almost unplayable games in Buffalo, in Kansas City.
I've been to Buffalo during one of those games. It's miserable. New Year's
Green
Day,
Bay, the frozen tundra.
I was there.
And those games look insane on TV. But I don't like the early forecast seems like they'll probably be in the low 30s, upper 20s.
Nick, just stop. Save your breath. This is the Midwest we're talking about. Anybody from the Midwest knows what I'm talking about here. The weather changes from 8 a.m. to noon to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, let alone 2 weeks in the future. Or
Right.
I would caution you because, Nick, I went to school one day just outside of Indianapolis. It was snowing, all right? And I left school to get on the bus. It was 75 and sunny in one day. That's how quickly the weather can change in the Midwest. Any weather forecast you get, just toss it out the window. Ask me when you get onto the field. Ask me when the game is being played what the weather is like, then you'll know.
Right. And I guess, when it comes to the weather, the number one place my mind goes is Nico, right? He's from California, warm weather environment. Now, granted, in my opinion, he played his best game of the year in the last game of the year at Vandy, and it was in the 30s there. So it wasn't like, sunny Florida. So, I think he's ready, at least from the weather perspective. Now, obviously for a big game in terms of playing on the road here in this environment at Ohio State, because we've seen him in 3 really tough environments this year. At Oklahoma, he played okay. Of course, we won that game. At Arkansas was probably his worst game of the year, I would say. a disaster. We ended up losing to them. And then at Georgia, I thought Nico played decent, and it was some other facets of the team that ultimately led to that loss. When it comes to this Ohio State game, though, this will probably be the toughest out of the 4 environments because it is a playoff. It's going to be the playoff environment.
But it's also the quickest to win the environment. It may be the most daunting, but if he goes out and leads a touchdown drive and Ohio State turns the ball over on their first drive, that quickly can become an easier environment than any of the other 3, given the situation with Ohio State and their fans.
Absolutely. I'm just so ready for this game. And I definitely want to talk much more about it next week when we make our picks. Now, I do want to go to some of the other games here. Clemson at Texas. And Jason, you were mentioning...
Just real quick, shout out to Spencer Young, great guy. Say the weather forecasts are like 4% right. Is that right, Jason?
Oh, yeah, if that.
Yeah. And, of course, good friend of Jason and I, Spencer Young. Of course, he mentioned also he wants to see Indiana and Georgia. And let's go to that since he mentioned that. Indiana at Notre Dame on a Friday night in Indiana. It's not Hoosiers on the court, but it's Hoosiers on the football field and Hoosiers in front of Touchdown Jesus. The Friday before Christmas. And
it's going to be hilarious to see who the fans cheer for, because normally the same people root for Notre Dame football than Indiana basketball.
Right. And I can't recall Indiana Notre Dame even playing a football, at least in the past 15 years.
It does. I don't think I recall it either. It's. I don't think it's very a very common matchup. But I think Indiana's going to go in there, and I think they're going to get their teeth kicked in personally. But
I would agree, but I don't trust Notre Dame either.
What we all predicted when they played Northern Illinois.
They were going to curb stomp them, and that didn't happen. And I get that Notre Dame has looked really good since then, and they've taken care of business in every game.
Riley Leonard relearned how to play football since then.
Yeah. I think Notre Dame is going to win this game. I was going to say, I think Notre Dame is the better team, but the problem that I have here is I think Kirk Cignetti, to me, is a much better coach than Marcus Freeman. I think Cignetti has the potential to outcoach Freeman significantly in this game, which, if I were a Notre Dame fan, would concern me. If for some reason...
Did he outcoach Ryan Day, though? Or was he out-talented by Ryan Day?
He was out-talented by Ryan Day.
That's a legitimate question, because I don't think it's as black and white as you think it is, Nick. I don't think Kurt Cignetti is really that great of a coach. I don't think he's battle-tested enough to know.
But look, I get it, right? The Indiana schedule is not that strong, but it's not like they were just squeaking by teams, right? I know Aaron Young, shout out to Aaron, he said that they squeaked by playing bad teams, except Ohio State. They got
they barely squeaked by a really bad Michigan team.
True. Some other teams did not manage to squeak by that Michigan team. And, you look at some of the other comparable games, right? Like when they played Nebraska and they won by 50, right? They convincingly handled Washington and Michigan State and all these other teams. And granted, I know none of these teams are that good, but
that's the key. They're not.
True, but I still think
that's like celebrating Tennessee beating up on whoever by 50 in 2022.
Right, and if you compare some of our tougher games, right? Like for example, like Miss State, we only beat them by 20 that night, and I have a feeling Indiana could have beaten them by more potentially. And they came out and executed at a really high level. But, as you mentioned, the one big game Indiana played, they got blown out in. But I still think, to me, that I don't think how many other coaches would have gotten Indiana to 11-1, even with this schedule. I just don't know if there's that many more out there that would have done that outside of Kirk Cignetti.
I mean, that may be, Nick, but that doesn't answer the question of whether or not, he outcoached Ryan Day or if he would outcoach Marcus Freeman. I don't think it's as black and white as you think it is. Truly, I don't. I think Kurt Cignetti has a really good offense, but I haven't seen anything out of him as a coach that makes me think, you put one of his teams into a do or die situation where you have to execute at the highest level, and he's going to make it happen. I have not seen anything that tells me that's going to happen. It could. And, if he goes out and he outcoaches Marcus Freeman and they go up to South Bend and win, fair play. Fine. But I haven't seen it yet. So pardon me for being incredulous in that. I'm not sold on Cignetti outcoaching anybody. I think he has a really good offense, and I think he put together a pretty good amalgamation of talent from the portal. And I think he took care of business against a bunch of bad teams, and then he got curb stomped by Ohio State, who even then is still not that good. I think they're good, but not great.
See, I guess that's where my hang-up is, because to me, Marcus Freeman often doesn't take care of business against bad teams.
I mean, that's also true, but that doesn't mean that this is a logical fallacy here. Just because they're not good doesn't mean that makes Cignetti good. But
right,
I don't know. I feel. Are we making picks tonight or not?
I guess we can.
I'm about to make picks if you'll let me.
I would say next week, because there's a lot of things that can change in a week. A lot of players can get hurt.
I mean, if Jason wants to go to make his picks, I don't know if he'll be able to be on next week.
But look, I'll go through and I'll pick every single game. I'll tell you who's going to win this tournament tonight.
Sounds good. And I'll make my picks next week, and I'll be right back. It's just I have to go home because it's getting late here. But I'll come back.
Aaron wants to join, Jason.
Okay.
I'll send. I think Aaron
send the link, and I'll put him before I leave.
This request.
Yeah,
Aaron has joined us before, not on this, but on Rock Solid.
Who wants to send him the link?
I got it.
All right,
I'm working on it.
Yeah,
Aaron and I can make our picks tonight. You guys do your thing next week. I may change my mind in the meantime, but as of right now, I'll tell you tonight who's going to win the tournament, because I'm treating this just like Selection Sunday in March Madness. I make one bracket, and that's who I believe is going to win. I go gut instinct on every single pick, and it usually does me pretty well. So I'm ready to go.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're going to have Aaron come on in just a second. I know, Gus, you are going to step out for a bit while you head home, but you'll be back by the time we close out this podcast.
I'm waiting for Aaron to join because I have to put in. Mm-hmm. So Aaron's in. I'll be back.
What's up, Aaron? Welcome to
the podcast. Up? Sorry for the lack of
turn your camera on.
I'm in the hotel room, man. I got to get situated.
This dude. This dude is sitting here in a hotel room in Atlanta, Georgia right now.
Okay. Now he's ready.
All right. We're good.
All right. And welcome in to the Two Countries, Two Americas All Sports podcast.
Yeah, shout out Spencer. He says, get dressed.
I am dressed. I was playing college football on Xbox.
All right. First game. Where are we going first?
All right. Well, since we got
Nick,
Aaron,
this is all you. I've crashed your podcast, and I've brought friends with me. Call me Coach Prime because I'm bringing my luggage with me.
So since we have Aaron now, let's go to the Longhorns. Obviously, the Texas Longhorns 5 seed hosting the 12 seed in the Clemson Tigers. Only in here because they won at the ACC championship. Now, Jason, you were saying that You think this isn't just a layup for Texas?
Not at all. I don't. And now, my gut reaction is this game's going to be a lot closer than a lot of people think. That's my gut reaction to that matchup. I think it's a bad matchup for Texas. That's not necessarily me saying I think Texas is going to lose, but I think Texas is going to have a harder game than a lot of people anticipate.
Yeah, Aaron, kind of like just what are your thoughts on this as a Texas fan?
Well, if Quinn Ewers plays like Dak Prescott again, I think Texas probably is in a dogfight. But if this is the Quinn Ewers pre-injury, like we saw against like Oklahoma, for example, or even in the Arkansas game, he looked good, then I think Texas wins by like 3 scores.
I'll say this. To me, I think Steve Sarkisian, if Quinn Ewers comes out and struggles again, he cannot be afraid to make the change to Arch Manning.
No. And I don't like that they use Arch Manning formationally. It's because Quinn Ewers, if you take him out in the red zone and you drive down the field, you're in rhythm, and then you just pull him. You just switch your quarterback like that. Like, I get wanting to do a different look, or you want a more mobile quarterback and this and that. But if your offense is in rhythm, you got to keep it going. You can't switch quarterbacks, in my opinion.
Yeah, and to me, it felt like Sark called the Georgia game as if he were kind of scared from Saturday. Like, especially, I felt like the late fourth quarter and overtime play calling with all the screens, and I felt like they weren't challenging Georgia vertically at all. And Texas has the weapons to challenge anybody to go vertical. And I'm just sitting here watching this confused as to why Sark wasn't doing that. And if you're going to win a national championship, he's going to have to do that. And if Quinn Ewers isn't able to push the ball downfield, you got to go to Arch. I mean, Nick Saban won a championship by benching Jalen Hurts and going to Tua.
All right, everyone put your tinfoil hats on with me. I told people going into this game it might be better if Texas lost matchup-wise. Because now you look, they play a weak Clemson team compared to other teams in the playoffs. And if they beat them, they play Arizona State, who is having a good year, but is Arizona State better than...
Taking advantage of the system. Sometimes you got to play the system.
So you play conservatively, thinking, okay, if we win this game, we probably play one of Tennessee or Ohio State. Or you lose, or you maybe hold back a little, and you think about what your matchup would be. Like, I think it's no secret that everyone, like that 5 seed, when you were looking at the 5 seed, you say, okay, we'll win this game, we play Boise State. Or I guess it's the 6 seed or 11 seed. You win that game, you play Boise State, who is arguably the weakest team in the playoff.
Right. And, we were talking about this last week with Gus about how, I thought Oregon should have intentionally lost Saturday to get that 5 seed, because Oregon would have been the 5 seed if they had lost. But no, they had to go out and win, and now they get Tennessee or Ohio State, which is just unreal to me. Just how broken this formatting is for the 5 and the 6 seeds. And I was asking this question of Jason and Gus about these head coaches, especially the ones at home. When you look at Sarkisian, Franklin, Freeman, and Day, and definitely Day, I think, has the most unique pressure on him. And I think Franklin is an underrated close second in terms of pressure. But I think, too, Freeman and Sark have pressure, too, because if you manage to lose at home in the first round, especially to a Clemson team that has 3 losses, that I think would bring in a lot of doubt about him.
I don't necessarily agree, because you think, what's Sark done? He's implemented one of the best offenses in football. Took you to a college football playoff last year and has had a winning season ever since he got it here. I don't think it's quite time to start talking about doubting him, I think Ryan Day is definitely somebody, because you talk about, losing to Michigan every year and that being that important to Ohio State fans. And correct me if I'm wrong, he hasn't won a playoff game, whether it was a 14 playoff or.
He won in the COVID year against Clemson, which I don't know how much we really want to count that, but that when they played 6 games.
So we'll put an asterisk on that one because you play 6 games. Ryan Day
I remember on New Year's Eve 2022, this dude got beat in the playoff by TCU. It was TCU, right?
No, Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Ryan Day has gotten very defensive over the born on third base comments, but he's continuing to show why people say that. He looks like somebody with no coaching experience, head coaching experience at least, that wasn't ready to take over the program. When you have a Ferrari and you need to change the engine, you got to put another Ferrari engine in it. And frankly, it feels like Ryan Day has the engine of like a Volkswagen.
Now I have a Volkswagen, but anyway.
Hey, so do I. And you know what? It's fine. And you can trust it to be itself. But it's not a Ferrari engine. It's just not.
Apparently, it can't beat Michigan. Apparently.
Yeah, you trust it to do what it does, lose to Michigan. Or in my case, not start in the dead of winter because it's diesel.
Okay, so question for you both. Looking at this bracket, are there any sleeper teams? Like, is a team like SMU a team that you think could make the semifinal? Or a Notre Dame I would consider to be a kind of a sleeper team? Because you think your favorites are Oregon, Georgia, Texas, and either one of Tennessee, Ohio State are teams that you look at and you think these are, like Penn State to me, they're pretenders. Like, they're always good, they're always ranked high, but they never win big games. So I'm curious to hear if you guys have any teams that you're kind of like, this is a team that could surprise people, like Boise State with Ashton Jeanty, or Arizona State with Scataba. Like, is there any team that you look at and you say this is a team that could sneakily make a semifinal or even a final?
It's going to be hard, right? Because, like, in the 14 playoff, we saw TCU and Washington the last 2 years pull off upsets to get to the Natty, which is a lot easier in a Final Four scenario. I find it a lot harder to believe that any one of those, like the Arizona State, Boise State, SMU, Indiana type teams, are going to make it all the way to the title in this format because of just what the attrition is going to be like. Now, if I had to say, okay, which one of those 4 teams is most likely to go deep? I'm going to be honest, I probably would say, honestly, I probably would go Boise State, and here's why. Because, one, I think when it comes to Arizona State, I just think they're going to have a much harder time beating Clemson, or beating Texas, excuse me. For Boise State, one, I think it's
early.
Well, okay, I'm just saying for argument, right? I think for Indiana, it's going to be really hard for them to beat Notre Dame and Georgia back-to-back. That's just going to be a tall task. For Boise State, as you said, I don't trust Penn State. So, one, there's a chance that SMU could upset them in Happy Valley. I really think there's a shot that the Mustangs pull that off. But even if they don't pull that off, you don't think that Ashton Jeanty and Boise State could find a way to engineer an upset against Penn State? Remember, Boise State took Oregon to the wire in Eugene. Everyone's acting like the Boise State has no business belonging here at all. But, Boise State has taken care of every other team they've played. And, unlike Indiana in their one game where they got blown out, Boise State actually, went blow for blow with the only team that's undefeated. And they already get a first-round bye. So if they pull off an upset, they're in the Final Four. So
I would tend to agree. I think it's Boise State regarding the question, and just because either team that they would play are very beatable, and then they only have to play those two teams to meet the criteria of going deep into the semifinal or into the quarterfinal, excuse me. So I think it's Boise State, but I don't think any of those teams make a run super deep. I don't think any of those teams make a run to the championship.
Plus, I think Boise State as a program has been waiting on this day for a long time. Since they won the Fiesta Bowl in 2006, since they had those Kellen Moore teams that came up short because of the loss to Colin Kaepernick at Nevada, the loss at home to TCU, and I think it was 2011. Like, one of those teams could, if they had won those games, could have had an argument to play the national title game in those years. Could have. I don't know if they would have, but they could have. And Boise State, ever since, I've always wondered, well, it felt like they missed their chance to really have a shot at it. But now they're going to have their shot at it.
All right, so let's go ahead and let's make some picks now. Where do we want to start with picks? We want to go top to bottom or bottom to top?
Let's do top to bottom.
Now, putting us in the fire first. Okay.
Tennessee at Ohio State.
Well, I think I know where you two are going. Considering
Well,
your background.
you and I are the only one making picks, Aaron. So I'm gonna take Tennessee, and it's not for lack of respect to Ohio State or to the environment or to the weather or whatever. I just don't think Ryan Day has it in him, and I think he's going to fold. And I think it's going to be reflected in this game. I think Josh Heupel, having more head coaching experience, especially at lower levels, is and also as a national champion quarterback as well. I think that experience puts him in a better place to coach this game than Ryan Day. And like was being discussed earlier, if the Vols can jump out to a lead, the crowd's going to turn on the Buckeyes really, really fast. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think the crowd's going to turn on Ohio State, and I think that's going to be wraps for Ryan Day. So give me the Vols, and I think it'll be relatively close, but I think the score probably won't reflect how close it is. I think the Vols pull away at the end.
So I'm actually going to flip it. I think Ohio State wins it because you say that Josh Heupel has more coaching experience, but Ryan Day has been in the playoffs, I think, every year he's coached, except for maybe one or two. Like, coaching experience in the playoffs, Ryan Day has tenfold over Josh Heupel, and I think that plays, especially since it's a home playoff game.
See, I would contend that the home playoff game is almost counterproductive considering the pressure that he's got on him after losing to Michigan again.
Yeah, but people are going to quickly forget that when they go into the play when they're playing Tennessee in the playoffs. They're not, you know what I mean?
Unless Tennessee jumps out to a lead early.
It would have to be a pretty significant lead for Ohio State fans to start turning on the team. Their opinion on Ryan Day would, to me, take a back seat in that moment. It would take a pretty significant lead, in my opinion, for them to turn on their home team in a playoff game. And because I like Tennessee, I'm kind of a fan of Tennessee, Ohio State is just a thorn in my side, and it would just be fitting for Ohio State to beat them. Like, every time I want Ohio State to lose, they never do. So that's another reason I'm picking Ohio State, but I think, Ryan Day has more playoff coaching experience, home playoff game. Weather aside, everybody. I think most guys on Tennessee's roster have played in the cold weather. You play in Lexington, which isn't necessarily cold weather. Like, it's not like they're not exposed to any cold weather.
And plus, like I said before, Tennessee's staff is getting heaters and coats. 100%. Nobody can convince me otherwise. Yeah,
Tennessee will for sure be prepared, and like you guys were talking about earlier, the environments that Nico's played in. You mentioned Arkansas, you mentioned Georgia, and I forget the other one you mentioned.
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. I mean, of those three, Oklahoma's turned out to be terrible. I mean, I know they just beat Alabama, but they're terrible. Arkansas's not that good. And to me, Georgia's the only hostile environment. And then I would contend that Ohio State is just as hostile of an environment as Georgia. So I don't know how Nico's going to play. I know you guys are, he's good, but this is one of, in my opinion, this is only his second true test on the road.
Yeah, it'll be a test of how far he's truly come in his freshman year, because I think he has come quite a significant way, but there are definitely questions of, is he truly ready in this moment? And two, obviously you're going to have to lean a lot on Dylon Sampson in this game if you're Tennessee. What's the yards per carry looking like here? Because Ohio State has a lot of talent on the defensive side. Because remember, Ohio State's defense was not the reason why they lost to Michigan, right? They got Jack Sawyer, Caleb Downs. I mean, they have a lot of talent on that side of the ball. So I don't expect Tennessee to go in there and run it up. I mean, because it's not like Tennessee's offense has been running it up on anyone. Like we've been in a lot of low-scoring games this year.
I do think Tennessee will have a defensive touchdown, though. I think one of the Tennessee defenders, whether it's Jermad or maybe Will Brooks, I think one of those guys is going to have a pick six in this game.
Tennessee, to me, has one of the best defenses in the country. I'm sure you both will agree. Top three, in my opinion, top three. I think Texas and Tennessee are two of the top three defenses in the country. That's another reason I think Texas will run Clemson out of the stadium.
Right, and there's one comment I wanted to make on Clemson. With Dabo Swinney, with winning the ACC, do you think that this basically convinces Dabo Swinney to not embrace the transfer portal and stick to his guns of what he believes?
I don't think it's going to matter. I think he's already doing that.
Yeah, because to me it seemed like if he lost this game, then he finally would have to concede his
idea. Yeah, Dabo is such. I could go all day on my opinions of Dabo Swinney. I don't think he's that good of a coach. But he's. We know what NIL money he's focused on. He's only focused on God's name, image, and likeness.
Dabo Swinney, what a guy! But
all right, so do you think that you think Texas is going to beat Clemson, Aaron?
By 3 scores.
By 3, I won't go that far. I think Texas wins, but I think it's a little closer than you think it's going to be.
It would just be fitting for me for Clemson to go in and win, just because every time Texas has shown like flashes of we're back. It's just like last year playing Washington and for like 3 of the 4 quarters just getting curb stomped. So the Texas fan in me picks Texas by 3 scores just because I think Texas is that much more talented than Clemson, and our defense is probably better than any defense Clemson's seen all year. I think we get to Kate Klubnik all the time. I think we force turnovers. We go back and forth.
That sounds familiar, Nick.
Yeah, I just wonder how many times they're going to show Clay Klubnik's parents.
Oh boy!
During this
game. I wonder if they're going to. They can go sit next to Caden Kent's parents too.
Yeah, Matthew McConaughey needs to challenge them to a fight.
It'll almost feel, as much as they're going to show Kate Klubnik's parents, it'll almost feel like was it Brent Musburger showing AJ McCarron's girlfriend?
Well, see, I didn't mind that as much.
Oh, obviously. All right, moving on.
All right,
Happy
SMU
Valley.
at Penn State.
Penn State against SMU. Aaron, who you got?
I got to pick Penn State and Happy Valley. I mean, does Penn State usually lose big games? Yeah, but do I think home game, SMU to me is probably – they're good for sure. but I think Penn State's still better. I pick Penn State. It'll be a close game. I pick Penn State by 3.
I'm going to second everything you said. I think you nailed it. I think they're comparable, but I think Penn State pulls it out at home.
Right. But I do want to shout out SMU, though. I mean, 40 years ago, given the death penalty, basically like they were going to be relegated to small-time college football forever. But, hey, shout out to them. They built themselves back up. And, just a year ago, we saw them come into the ACC and thinking like, okay, for SMU, good for them getting up to a bigger conference. And now here they are in the college football playoff. It's quite remarkable how that program has turned around.
Yeah, the Pony Express is back.
Yeah, the Pony Express. I just have a fascination with SMU for some reason, so I'm kind of happy to see them there.
They have the best-looking logo in all of college sports. So.
Yeah, their 30 for 30 is cool. So I don't know.
We love slush funds.
Yes, and now it's legal.
As much as you love McBenjamins.
Yeah. Well, that actually ended up helping Tennessee, which is hilarious. Shout McDonald's bags. All right. And the Indiana Bowl, the Indiana Special, Indiana at Notre Dame.
Notre Dame by 50.
I second that. I think, like Jason, you're talking about Cignetti not being. This isn't even IU football. This is literally James Madison playing in Bloomington.
Yeah, with the kid from Ohio at quarterback.
Like, this is James Madison in red and white. I think Cignetti is squeaked by playing Dylan Raiola or Patrick Mahomes, whoever he wants to be. And who have they played? Nobody.
Ohio State and got curb stomped. So,
which was lovely.
Okay, Aaron. So you got Oregon versus Ohio State. Let's go rapid fire through the rest of these games so that we don't forget who we've picked. So you've got Ohio State and Eugene against Oregon.
Oregon by 2 scores.
Okay.
Oregon's so good.
And that's in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I keep forgetting. Okay, so Texas against Arizona State.
Texas. I think Texas's defense is too good. Scatabo is not. I think they'll shut him down. And I think once they shut him down, Arizona State's in trouble.
All right. Boise State, Penn State.
This will be I'll pick Boise State. That'll be the upset, if you will.
All right. Notre Dame, Georgia.
Georgia.
Okay.
So it's Oregon versus Texas. I pick Oregon.
Oh, yeah. Oregon, Texas, and then Boise State, Georgia.
Yeah, I'll pick Oregon to win that. And then I'll pick Georgia to beat Boise State.
Okay.
And then I would pick.
Reminder: this championship game is in Atlanta.
I still pick Oregon. Oregon's way too good. I think Carson Beck is PV. Is a Potemkin Village quarterback.
Yeah, well, he's hurt, so they got this other kid playing now. Oh.
And you saw. I know. Give this kid another couple weeks, but you saw hints of his inexperience in the SEC championship, like trying to force the ball downfield, throwing it into an interception, giving Texas the ball back with a chance to tie the game. So I think, Carson Beck is the better of the two. That, like, when you're going into a playoff scenario, you want the experience.
Sure.
But I still think Oregon mops the floor with them.
All right. So you hear it. You've heard it here. First pick of the national championship on the Two Countries, Two Americas All Sports podcast is Oregon from special guest Aaron. Okay, so who do I have now? Tennessee versus Oregon in the Rose Bowl. As much as I want to say Tennessee here, I got to take Oregon. I think it'll be closer than it probably should be, given Tennessee's relative inexperience. I think the defense will hold Tennessee in it, but I think Oregon by probably 10 at the end of the day. Texas, Arizona State, give me Texas. I don't think that one will be close. Boise State against Penn State. I'm going to go with Aaron here. I think it's going to be Boise State. Georgia over Notre Dame. I don't think that one's going to be close. So Oregon versus Texas, I'll take Oregon. Boise State against Georgia, I will take Georgia. And national championship, same national championship that Aaron picked, Oregon versus Georgia, but I'll take Georgia in this one. I think the number one thing that we are forgetting in this is nobody knows. None of these matchups know each other better than Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning for obvious reasons. And so I'm going to give it to Kirby Smart. I think at home, and I think against a guy that used to coach under you from your coaching tree, I think that favors Kirby Smart and Georgia. So give me Georgia. I think they're going to win this national championship.
But, so let me ask you this. You look at Oregon, you look at Georgia, you look at Dylon Gabriel versus Carson Beck, you look at Dan Lanning, who's proven to be a masterful coach, and Kirby Smart, who we all know is also a very good coach. Does the environment, is that what pushes it over the top for you? Playing essentially a home game in Atlanta where Oregon
I
travels.
think it. I'm not necessarily sure that would put them over the top necessarily, but I think it is a big factor. And I think that Dan Lanning, having worked under Kirby Smart, I think that works to both of their advantages and both of their disadvantages simultaneously. But I would trust Kirby Smart in this situation more than I would trust Dan Lanning, just because this Georgia group is more experienced. This coaching staff at Georgia is more experienced. Dan Lanning's staff is relatively new to this scene, whereas Kirby Smart and friends are very well accustomed, usually to losing to Alabama. But now that they don't have Alabama in here to lose to, they're going to have an opportunity, especially at home. I think it's going to be Georgia. Give me Georgia by a touchdown in the championship against Oregon.
I think, obviously, I picked opposite of you. I picked Oregon to win. I think Oregon having the tougher road. I mean, you look at who Georgia plays. They'll play one of the Indiana teams, and both teams are on the weaker end of the bracket here. And Oregon has to play Tennessee, who was top 10 preseason, right?
Yeah. Well, we were 15, I think, in the preseason. But we were in the top 10 by like week 3.
Top 10, former top 10 team. Ohio State, obviously, top 5 team most of the year. You can't, I mean, that's your first matchup of the college football playoff. And then you'll probably play a Texas team who's been top 5 all year. So you pretty much go from one top 5 team to another top 5 team going into that final. And Georgia's going to play one of the Indiana teams in Boise State, probably. Unless Penn State wins, then you play one of the Indiana teams at Penn State. I mean, it would be easy for Georgia to fall into a lull just based on talent, like opponent level drop.
But also, how does that help them stay healthy? You know, if they blow out these teams, they can put in their backups and skate by and be less worn down and have potentially fewer injuries to worry about going into those next rounds, whereas the other teams may be in 3 straight dogfights to get where they go. So I think that works out both ways.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be just so fascinating. Of course, I'm going to give my picks on this bracket next week, just looking at these games. But, honestly, just kind of listening to these prospective matchups, one thing I'm also realizing is you just wonder how many of these games are going to be close versus blowouts. Because we have the potential for some blowouts here.
I think 2 of the first round games on the bottom half of the bracket are going to be your blowouts. Guarantee the one at the bottom is going to be a blowout. And I think if SMU missteps, I think that can easily snowball into a blowout if they're not careful.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, too, because it's like if we start seeing some blowouts, especially the first ever playoff game here, the 12-team playoffs, a blowout, then I can already see the takes online be like, oh, this was a mistake. This is why we should have never gone to 12 teams. So I can already see the reaction from like the Josh Pates of the world who don't like the 12-team playoff.
Okay, so on that note, I saw something on Twitter earlier this week, and it said you can't, the 4-team playoff people were like, that's just not enough teams. You got to put more teams in, and they bump it to 12 teams, and people aren't willing to. They don't like how it's formulated or how the teams are decided, and blah, blah, blah. Take every college football team, every single one, from Division I FBS down to Division III, and it's like over 1,000 teams or something, and let's just do one big tournament.
Right. And then how many of those are going to be blowouts, right? Like, or do like a 64-team playoff and have FCS in it too.
Oh, yeah. But imagine like a team like who's mid, like Middle Tennessee State going to play Mount Union or Wisconsin Whitewater, those like perennial powerhouses in Division III, and then getting beat. Like, obviously your Georgias, your Oregons, your Texases are going to play. I mean, they'll put like Anderson University and win by like 150, but there are going to be those matchups.
Shout out to the Anderson Ravens.
There's going to be those matchups, and there's going to be that chaos where, maybe you're a team like, or NAIA included, a team like, love me some FCS football.
So while we're on college playoffs, do want to acknowledge FCS playoffs ongoing here. So we're at the quarterfinals now. And your A finalists are Montana State, Idaho, NDSU, and Mercer. Shout out to the SoCon. My uncle Steve is a professor at Mercer in Macon, so shout out to him. We have Incarnate Ward versus South Dakota State, and UC Davis versus South Dakota. So no surprise to me that every one of these matchups are either the Missouri Valley or the Big Sky.
Yeah. Don't forget. Nobody can forget North Dakota State should have beaten Colorado earlier this year. And where's Colorado now?
Top 25.
Top 25 in FBS. That North Dakota State and South Dakota State, Montana State and Montana are all teams that would be ranked in FBS. I think most of these teams in the playoffs would be ranked in FBS.
Yeah. So who do you think is going to win the FCS? Because I'll be honest, I'm not completely sure. I mean, a gut would just say NDSU, but
gut instincts North Dakota State. But if I think the national championship will be decided between North Dakota State and Montana State, just because, like, I watched the North Dakota State versus South Dakota State game. And it seemed, South Dakota, it was like 12-10 going into the last minute of the game before North Dakota State made a game-winning drive. But, I mean, North Dakota State, they've been there year after year after year after year. They know how to win the big games. They know how to win the championship. And I think that will propel them over anybody else.
Touchdown Tommy's time to shine. Give me Montana State.
Touchdown Tommy, that's who you're riding with, the number 1 seed?
Man,
not with Montana State, just with Touchdown Tommy Malott.
What's going to be electric is if we get South Dakota State and NDSU in the semis in the Fargo Dome.
It would be in the final, right?
I think they're, if I'm correct, NDSU is 2, South Dakota State's 3, so I think they would meet in the semis.
Okay, so then I missed
road trip.
That game,
that would be unbelievable. Now, I do just want to briefly talk. So, I brought up earlier how with the 12-team playoff, it feels like the other bowl games are just worthless at this point. Like, I'll be honest, I don't even know what half these matchups are because I haven't even thought about them because, well, I'm focused on the Vols in the playoffs. Now, I think the one people have brought up just because of the hilarity of it is the ReliaQuest Bowl, Alabama versus Michigan, which I don't know where that's at. That's somewhere like right there. Yeah, Alabama not in the playoffs. ReliaQuest Bowl. Shout out to the Tide. A rematch of last year's Rose Bowl. There's Louisville, the Sun Bowl, and it's Washington. Of course, the question for any of these teams is how much of their actual teams are actually going to play in these games with all the opt-outs these days. Like, I don't. You never know. Like what teams are going to actually be like basically full, and which teams are going to be like half full. You know.
That's why any bowl game other than the playoffs really doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, like even like the Alamo Bowl, like what is this? Like it's a Big 12 matchup. It's a conference game in a bowl game. Like it's just super weird. I saw one guy did shout this matchup though, NC State East Carolina, just because that's kind of a rivalry game, kinda. Being played at the Naval Academy, Miami and the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I mean, all they had to do was beat Syracuse. And they would have been in the playoff. Instead, they lost and are going to the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
The Pony Express thanks them for their kind contributions.
Yes. And hey, Nebraska, they're back in a bowl game at 6-6. They're going to get to play in Yankee Stadium. So you go to your first bowl game in nearly a decade and you have to go to the Bronx.
But tell me why UConn is playing in Boston and Boston College is playing in New York. Explain that one.
That's actually a good point. That's a really good point. Hey, this would be a really good basketball game. I don't know this year though. UConn's kind of struggling right now, but
USC Texas A&M might be a pretty good game.
Hey, USC is 1-0 against SEC teams this season in Las Vegas.
Yeah, they beat LSU. Forgot about that.
Arkansas, Texas Tech, and the Liberty Bowl. I mean, hey, old Southwest Conference matchup. Hey, Georgia Tech, Vandy. This honestly
That'll be a fun game.
Yeah, that might be a game I actually watch, like outside of the playoffs, just because those two teams will actually show up and play.
And that's got to be pretty equidistant, right? Birmingham from Atlanta to
Birmingham from
Nashville?
Atlanta is about 3.5 hours or so, I think, and then maybe a little bit more to Nashville. But yeah, that's about as equidistant as it gets, I think.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Oklahoma.
confirm that real quick, but
That's the
I
game
think
right
that's
there.
right.
That's the game of bowl season right there.
Navy versus Oklahoma. Oh man, look, Oklahoma fans look like, oh, we're coming to the SEC. We're a dark horse playoff team. You're playing at TCU Stadium. You try to lead the Big 12 and you're playing a bowl game in a Big 12 stadium. Man.
Doesn't Navy still run the wing tee or the wishbone?
Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, we should pick that just real quick. Army Navy this week. Who do y'all got? I forgot that game was even happening.
Army.
Shout out Army. They won the American.
I'm going Army.
Same. I'm going Army too. And think about how messed up if Army had somehow gotten a playoff spot. How messed up the Army Navy game would be this week. Like, how would Army even approach that game?
All out. You guys, because the playoffs don't start till the 21st. You still got 11 days. Well, I guess from that point it would only be. All right. Well.
And now, regarding the equidistant question, Georgia Tech to Birmingham, 2.5 hours. Vandy to Birmingham, 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Right. Oh, look at Florida
that is as equidistant as it gets.
Florida, look, the Florida fans are so happy about this season. Like, this season was, in their view, a resounding success to get to 7-5. The reward is the Gasparilla Bowl against Tulane.
Let's see if they have better luck than USC against Tulane.
That's true. Yeah, I've got I think it's the LA Bowl presented by Gronk. UNLV
and also
Cal.
Shout out to resident Tulane fan Spencer Young in the comments.
Right. Also, Memphis. They are ranked, so I guess congratulations to them. They get a cookie, and they get to go to Frisco.
Yeah, let them stay there and play the FCS champion and get curb stomped in Frisco.
Yeah, I mean, remember, Memphis for years was like, oh, we're the best team in Tennessee. Okay, Memphis. And the basketballs are number 1. Well, Memphis, which is supposed to be a basketball school, is not. So I don't know how that happened. Anyway, so I kind of want to talk about some other non-playoff, because we kind of touched on the transfer portal effect earlier. We looked at like Chaz Nimrod, Jalen Smith for the Vols, and some of the other teams too are dealing with this. And this really goes back to that Lane Kiffin quote that I mentioned earlier about the schedule and how the current format of the schedule, because within the last week we've had the playoff selection show, conference championships, the transfer portal open, and National Signing Day. Like, I don't know how this is sustainable for college football at all. I mean, how do you, like, what should we readjust in the rankings or in the schedule to make this more manageable for college football programs?
Which days are coming up again?
Well, this has all already happened. Like the early National Signing Day, which I think we should go back to just a traditional National Signing Day in February, in my opinion, because I don't know why it was not broken. Well, like, why did we have to fix it?
Because you want to be able to get those guys to bowl practice on the early signing day. I mean, that's what it really came down to. You want to be able to get guys like Boo Carter to bowl practice and to get them down to the Citrus Bowl to experience a game day their first week on campus.
Didn't Nico go to bowl practice?
I think so. Yeah, in 22. So, I mean, I get it from that standpoint. There's got to be a better way to do this. I think what's going to happen, and you're already beginning to see it at some schools, you're going to start seeing schools just hire general managers to handle the roster building side of it.
Shout out to General Andrew Luck.
Yeah, General Andrew Luck now on Twitter.
Yeah, for Stanford. I mean, it's just going to have to happen. For these coaches, they can't handle all this. It's too much for a person to handle. Now, speaking of signing day, though, this were the rankings, at least from On Free. And I totally did not choose this because it has the most favorable rankings to Tennessee. But obviously, Texas, number 1, 4 or 5 stars. There's Oregon, Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, Auburn at 6, LSU 7, A&M 8, Michigan 9, Tennessee 10. So all SEC or Big Ten teams, which I don't think that's changing for the foreseeable future.
To be honest, I'm a little surprised Auburn was up there. Auburn has a 5-star. Interesting.
Yeah, who was that 5-star? They got Deuce Knight, the quarterback from Mississippi.
Okay, so I'm curious your guys' thoughts here. You said you don't see this changing anytime soon. Do you think if Bill Belichick goes to North Carolina, that changes?
No shot.
That was the next.
No, he's not going to be able to recruit these kids.
What do you mean? Yeah. Did you see? He said he wants to build a pipeline to the NFL. He will set up the nutrition the way NFL teams do. He will set up the skills, like the practices, the way the NFL do. He'll teach kids how to act like a pro. He's literally. It sounds like he's trying to set up an NFL academy in college, and it's not like
so he can be John Calipari in football.
Except they have to stay for 3 years.
I mean, that's fair. I just don't think that.
Yeah, so I just want to go.
My gut instinct is no, he's still not going to be able to recruit very well.
So I don't know if y'all saw this. It's from a North Carolina writer named Ollie Connolly. So he said, quote, Belichick has agreed to become the next North Carolina coach. Belichick has handled the school at 400-page organizational Bible of structure, payment plans, staff, and choices, decisions on whether to commit with UNC. It's expected to know the decision within 24 hours. The Belichick's Bible will require historic levels of investment from the school. It includes a salary minimums position by position and a willingness to hire 2 staffs, a coaching staff ran by Belichick, a recruitment staff run by a sitting college GM who would require a buyout. Belichick has a college and pro version of his updated manual and has shared it with other schools and teams, NFL teams, but he drafted a new one that's specific to UNC that touched on every aspect of the program and school when he signed from the AD, chancellor, trustees, and boosters. And there's always been already been pushed back from the group of trustees with input from wider faculty. And, of course, they don't know if it's going to ultimately work out. But I'll say this. I don't think this would work. I mean, Belichick is 72 years old, and North Carolina just got done firing one nursing home retiree. I don't know why they're trying to not go younger with this hire.
Because
this is a very unique opportunity.
Because the 71-year-old brings 7 Super Bowl rings to the table.
Like I said, unique opportunity.
Yeah, it is not every day that a multiple-time Super Bowl champion comes to your door and says, "I will coach for you. Here's how I will do it, and this is what needs to happen for me to do it." I mean, it's almost like Nick Saban walked into North Carolina, their 80s office, and said, "Hey, I'll come coach for you."
Now, how much of this do you think Michael Jordan will sign off on personally and push for? Because if anybody from the UNC boosters and anybody with any pull at UNC would be on board with this, I feel like it would be Michael Jordan.
He might fund the whole thing himself.
That's where I was going with it.
Because look at their schedule, man. They don't play anybody. I mean, they play Clemson, but other than that, Duke's fallen off. Stanford's not that good anymore. North Carolina State is decent, right?
I mean, when Clemson, Louisville, and NC State are your toughest opponents on a yearly basis, and then SMU is in the conference, and they're pretty good, but still, when those are your toughest opponents on a yearly basis, and you only get like 2 of them on a yearly basis, that's a problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Gus Tomazeli is back in the call. I know you really wanted to talk about this topic, Gus. So I'll hop in here. We're talking about Bill Belichick. And we were talking about this earlier because I have my reservations about Belichick, but I think you are gung-ho on it.
I'm all for it. I mean, we can't deny that he's one of the greatest football coaches of all time. You can't talk about, he had Tom Brady, he had this. I mean, he built a dynasty in New England. He was one of the big reasons why the Patriots, got the amount of rings that they did. So, I mean, he is a great one of the best football coaches, and he has still on the tank, and he might think, hey, if I somehow do good in college, I mean, he doesn't have to win a national championship. He just had to maybe take North Carolina to an ACC championship or win maybe a conference, championship. And then he'll be already, for example, a debate. Is he, overall better than Nick Saban? Because the biggest argument of Saban is like, Saban dominated college, but he failed the NFL. Now you're gonna have the real comparison. I'm all for it. I think he still has on the thing. I mean, he interviewed for NFL jobs recently, so he wants to work in football. So if the NFL is not opening any doors, he's trying college.
The hilarious part about that whole thing, Gus, is you're talking the 2 best, football coaches of all time. RIP to the Cleveland fans who had them both on staff and they still fired them.
And they did not win anything with them. How crazy.
So here's
typical Cleveland.
I think this would take like Bill Belichick. So I've heard that, when Tom Brady was in New England, like Bill Belichick would be harder on him than anybody else. He would, watching film, he'd be like, now if our quarterback can hit this flat route, we might win some games. Just like all over him. I think it would take a special quarterback to play in the Bill Belichick system in college. Like, your kid's going to have leather skin. And second, what if, the perfect offensive coordinator, I think that would mesh so well with Bill Belichick. And this is an unpopular name in the football world right now, John Gruden.
Oh, my God. That would have been insane.
You're trying to build an NFL pipeline school where you set up everything like the NFL. John Gruden as your offensive coordinator, it fits. The shoe fits perfectly.
Either he or McDaniels.
Yeah. the spider too wide banana. And hey, John Gruden, he's starting to get himself more reingratiated with the younger generation being at Barstool now. So,
He said, "How would you cover Travis Kelce on an option route?" You can't.
Yeah. Unless you're Taylor Swift, then you can cover him on anything. But, yeah. But as I said, the main thing here for me is the age and the fact that you're just getting rid of Mac Brown, and it just feels like you're replacing one old guy with another old guy.
No, you're replacing one old guy with another old guy who has 7 Super Bowl rings. Big difference.
And has the coaching pipe. Could literally call it. Like, he could honestly reach out to Tom Brady and say, "Hey, will you come work out with my quarterbacks for the summer?" Sure, why not? Or, you have Wes Welker, you have Rob Gronkowski. I mean, or Randy Moss.
Is the relationship good? Is the relationship good enough between Brady and Belichick? Because I thought there was some animosity there.
No, they're fine.
They just got sick of each other. That's what happens when you work with somebody for 20 years.
Yeah, they're fine. They did the roast of Tom Brady, and Belichick and Brady, they're fine.
One person would have called Julian Edelman. I think he would have been a good, maybe a tight ends coach, or he would be good in his staff. And you talk about aging. I mean, Mac Brown did not do a bad job. It's just he probably could have achieved more, especially Drake May. But again, North Carolina does not have big expectations in football. All the pressure is on basketball. So they're trying to get these, kind of prestige coaches because they know they need them to be relevant because the spotlight is in basketball, not in football.
Right, and are you going to have so much NIL investment in football, though, that it takes away from basketball? Because, North Carolina cares, as you said, first and foremost, about basketball, about the Tobacco Road rivalry with Duke. But I do think North Carolina obviously has a lot of money, right? You got the Michael Jordans of the world. Now, the thing about Jordan to watch is right now he's involved in a massive lawsuit with NASCAR because his team is fighting with the racing organization over the way the sport is organized. So that's going to be a very costly endeavor for Jordan. But I still imagine, even so, he probably could still fund this and help fund that lawsuit at the same time, I would think. But still, even for a multi-billionaire, he's putting a lot of money right now.
I think the bigger thing here is he has a network of people that he could convince to spend their money too. I don't think the money is going to be a problem. And also, if we're talking ridiculous coordinator hires like John Gruden, give me Mike Vrabel as the DC. Why not?
That'd be nuts. Now, Ohio State fans desperately want Mike Vrabel as their head coach.
I think Aaron wants to make a point.
The point is just you're talking about network. Look at the network of guys that can come in. Teddy Bruschi can come in and coach linebackers for a summer.
Gerard Mayo can come by and coach for a weekend.
The amount of Hall of Famers that guy has coached, and then
Matt White.
Not to mention his coaching network. Like this, North Carolina could become a powerhouse in 2 years.
Well, with all those resources and getting a GM, because, one thing I was thinking about was like, okay, if you're going to bring in these coaches, you need recruiters. But if you have a general manager, you wouldn't necessarily need their coaches to be recruiters in the traditional sense. Which, when you look at the Sabans, you look at the Kirbys, and look at the Dan Lannings of the world, they have required their coaches to be tenacious recruiters. But if we're moving to a GM style of football, then maybe you don't need those coaches to be recruiters like you used to. Spencer Young is saying, why not Adam Vinatieri for kicking coach?
Because we need him at Louisville to coach his son. Next.
All right. Well, one coordinator that definitely would have helped tremendously Bill Belichick, Ed Orgeron. He will be a tremendous recruiter. We know he can recruit.
Maybe just leave him at GM. Like, let him be GM and the motivational speaker.
Yeah.
Because that would be very interesting. So we'll see if they actually get this done. We'll probably know by tomorrow or the next day. Why not? UNC brings Bill Belichick to the ACC, which, man, imagine the first matchup between Belichick and Dabo next year. That would be unbelievable television.
Oh, that would
Dusty
be
TV.
better than having Jimbo Fisher hire Bobby Petrino and getting into a fist fight on the A&M sideline. That I would pay money. I wouldn't pay money to watch the fights and stuff, but I'll watch those. I'll watch those fights.
I need the sleeveless hood or the short sleeve hoodie in 25-degree weather. Bill Belichick in college would be awesome.
They'll be awesome. Awesome.
Also, I think the low key, like, can you imagine that road game with like Syracuse? Those half of those folks are Bills fans, and the animosity from that crowd towards Bill Belichick, I'm sure it would be.
Think about the money that guys get. The tickets, like, just to say, "Oh, Bill Belichick's our coach." I'm gonna go watch. I'll go watch just to watch Bill Belichick, just to see him.
Absolutely, like Duke at UNC. I mean, because I think Manny Diaz is going to do a really good job at Duke. He's already had a really good first year with the Blue Devils. That could be a must-watch rivalry in football moving forward. So, I mean, that's it. There's going to be some very interesting games here. Now, one team I want to bring up is the UCF Knights, because, Gus Malzahn left him to become the OC at Florida State. It sounds like it was basically an unofficial firing after going 4-8, and they just let him go and take another job to save face. So what did UCF decide to do when they need a new head coach? They decided to go. Yep. What was it? It's a Gijo song, End of Beginning. Basically, they have reverted back to Scott Frost, who left UCF after the perfect 13-0 season, where UCF fans contend they won a national championship.
Hey, they don't contend. According to the record book, they did win it, according to one of the polls. They are recognized. They are. Don't shoot the messenger.
All right. Well, okay, according to one pollster who just wanted to make a name for himself.
No, it's not one pollster. It's one of the official polls that the NCAA recognized them as the champion. They are in the record book as the champion according to that particular poll. That is true. You can fact check that. That is true.
You brought up Gus Malzahn. He's the OC of Florida State now.
Yeah.
How will that work? How does Florida State not fire Mike Norvell after the absolute dumpster fire of a season they just had?
He convinced them that he needed a new OC and a new quarterback, and he's got 1 year to prove it. Basically, that's the kind of the vibe I've gotten.
So Gus Malzahn will be out of a job for a second year in a row.
Yeah. Plus, he got such a big buyout after a contract extension last year. So for Florida State, it put them in a really bad position. They should have given him the extension. Because here's the thing. If you look at Mike Norvell, 3 of his 5 years at Florida State are losing seasons. You're in the weakest of the Power 4 conferences. And you're Florida State. No. You shouldn't have any losing seasons at Florida State, let alone 3 in 5 years. I don't care what the other two looked like. I mean, he had an okay ending of the season in 2022. And then, you went undefeated in 2023. And obviously that wasn't enough to get into the playoff, and then your team quit. And really this whole season for Florida State goes back to that Orange Bowl where the team decided to quit after not making the playoff. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And I don't know if Mike Norvell is going to win that program back.
Didn't DJ Uiagalelei say he's coming back too?
Oh, DJ Ukulele. I remember. I think it's Ukulele.
Yeah.
I saw something that said he might come back because of a red shirt he's got. He's got one more red shirt.
Oh, God.
Or, like an injury red shirt.
Sorry, Florida State fans. Yeah. Sorry, Florida State, man. What a disaster. What a disaster. But for Scott Frost, though, at UCF, and obviously in the Big 12, it's much different than the last time, right? Because he was in the G5. They were in the G5 back then, but now they're in the P4. And UCF has not really done well in the P4 since they've joined. They haven't pulled off an SMU, right? Because SMU was able to parlay their move up to the P4 into a playoff appearance. UCF has not come close, even though I thought there's a lot of people who kind of speculate they could be a dark horse, myself included, that they could be a dark horse this year. It's going to be interesting to see if what happened in Nebraska. Was his failure in Nebraska more on Scott Frost, or was it more that Nebraska's a dead program?
I mean, look at their schedule. Baylor's in and out of the rankings most years. BYU's ranked. Cincinnati kind of bounces back and forth. Kansas State's typically ranked. Houston's been ranked. Oklahoma State's been ranked. Kansas is somehow good all of a sudden. West Virginia kind of teeters between being ranked and not. Like this, their schedule is not easy. They have some going from G5 to P4. You have some serious catching up to do.
I mean, you asked about the question of Scott Frost and Nebraska, but Matt Rule, which is also a good football coach, I mean, he was literally in the NFL, Carolina Panthers. I mean, he didn't do a good job. That's why he that's why he was fired. But even him still can't figure out how to bring Nebraska back to relevance. So, and I think it was a fair hire because when the things when you are anywhere when your programs face the backs against the walls, when you need a new coach, you revert to the last time you were successful, and I think that's a fair point. I think it's a legitimate hire.
Nebraska needs to bring back Bo Pelini. Because he wasn't good enough for Nebraska back then, but they would kill to go 9-3 now.
Yeah, so does Youngstown State. They need to bring back Bo Pelini too.
Yeah. Also, another hire, I'm curious to get your thoughts on it as well. Purdue has hired Barry Odom from UNLV, former Missouri coach. Can he, what can he do at Purdue? And given the fact they're no longer in the Big Ten West, right, it's going to be really hard for any team that's not the elite teams to make noise. But we saw, Indiana this year. Yeah, obviously benefit from an easy schedule, but they've been able to get to 11-1. Is there any chance that Odom can mimic what Cignetti has done? Because I think for Purdue, that's the mindset for them right now. Is they look at their arch rival and seeing all the success they just have lucked into this year. And to me, it seems like that they are trying to recreate that magic.
No, I mean, you think Cignetti at SMU is way different than this guy at UNLV. I mean, James Madison was a powerhouse, and UNLV is good, but they're no powerhouse.
One thing Barry Odom cannot do is impress my grandfather. I told him, and he was less than enthused, but he said it can't possibly get any worse than 66-0 losing to IU. So he'll take it. But Peepaw was hoping for Chip Kelly.
To me, what I'm watching for is, does Barry Odom bring Brennan Marion with him, the OC from UNLV, who runs the go-go offense, which is a unique offense that only Brennan Marion runs? Or does Brennan Marion get moved up to the OC this year? Or move up to a head coach somewhere this year? He could take over at UNLV, potentially.
I could see Purdue paying him more as the OC than UNLV would pay him as a head coach.
100%. I agree with that.
Yeah, so, and if that's true, then it'll be interesting to see that offense in the Big Ten, because it did have a lot of success in the Mountain West this year, over the past couple of years.
But does that have success in cold climate? Like you bring it, like you talk about weather, does that go-go offense throwing the ball, does that work in Nebraska in November? Or Iowa in late October? Does that work in these colder climates where you need to have a run game?
Well, I'll say this. I mean, there's a lot of option in the go-go offense. So, to me, just watching it's predicated around the run, because it's like a lot of one quarterback, two halfback formations. It's kind of like this weird hybrid of the spread and pistol. So, I mean, it could. Granted, the type of athlete you're going to get at Purdue, it's not going to be obviously what you're going to face on the other sideline from a Michigan or Ohio State or Oregon or, these other Big Ten schools. So he certainly has his work cut out for him. And Barry Odom wasn't great at Missouri. So, But I mean, and that's the thing. Missouri is a better school than Purdue when it comes to football.
Oh. I thought Purdue's best choice would have been Chip Kelly, like Jason was saying earlier. That to me made the most sense, and I thought it would have, kind of forwarded their rebuild a little bit quicker. Just because I think he's a proven coach in college. He knows the Big Ten. He to me would have been the higher.
Absolutely. And also, just one more I'm going to note, because this is just a really weird one. So, Southern Miss. So, okay, so let me set the scene. So, Marshall won the Sun Belt on Saturday. They defeated Louisiana in Lafayette, Louisiana. And then Charles Huff, the head coach at Marshall, bolts and goes to a rival school in Southern Miss because Marshall would not give him a new contract. Super weird situation. And to me, for Charles Huff, he's had a lot of success at Marshall. I don't know why he wouldn't just try to go to a bigger school. I don't know if no one came after him at Marshall, but like if you had the choice, would you rather live in Huntington, West Virginia, or Hattiesburg, Mississippi?
Is there a third option?
Yeah, I think that's a
Look, I've been to Huntington. Huntington is a nice place. I don't think I would want to live there, but I liked it.
Right. I've been to Hattiesburg, and I wasn't impressed. I've never been to Huntington.
But they have an Applebee's. Never forget.
Oh.
They do have but don't stay in the Days Inn in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. It's the nastiest place on earth.
Yeah, but they have an Applebee's. If you know, you know.
You need to go get some Dollaritas.
The joke, Aaron, is their fans were very, very, very upset with the Super Regional against Tennessee a couple years ago. That's the joke.
Yeah. And then because they forced us to go to Hattiesburg, and we still went down there and won anyway.
And then we celebrated with Dollaritas.
Oh, man. Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, that Holiday Inn was in Meridian, not Hattiesburg. But I know we stayed in Hattiesburg one of the other nights. I don't know. It's two terrible small Mississippi towns. Who cares? I have been to Hattiesburg though. So in any case, that's all the college football topics I had. So I did want to transition over to college basketball real quick and shout out to the number one basketball. So I think Aaron. So I don't know if y'all wanted to talk college basketball at all, or
yeah, I was gonna say thanks for joining us, Aaron. Pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I always enjoy getting on here and talking sports with you guys.
Absolutely, it's been fun, and this college football playoffs are gonna be fun in this off season. It's gonna be even crazier. So, in any case, moving on to some college basketball, because our number one basketballs are number one for the third time in school history, and they won tonight again over Miami. They won by 13. It was a kind of a game where they were in control most of the time, but Miami made their runs, but they won. Basketballs are 9-0, despite only having 8 scholarship players tonight because of some injuries that the Vols are having. So, I mean, what do you think this kind of means being won this early? Because, I mean, really, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't mean much of anything to be ranked number one this early in early December. But still, given the fact that we haven't been number one that much in school history, it's still cool.
Number one is never something to laugh at, but I'm not going to put too terrible much into the number one in December.
I mean, being number one is nice, as Jason said, but we all know that in college basketball, the rankings in November is basically meaningless. It's maybe early January then we start paying attention, and then from then on, then you really need to be on the top to get in March. But it's for the school, for the program itself, it's good because it's another year that you can say you're number one. But again, it's the question that we all time and time again ask is that, is this team gonna keep the good performance to March?
And that's going to be hard. With the SEC, this might be as dominant of a conference as we have seen. The SEC won the SEC ACC challenge last week, 14-2. On top of that, the SEC now, I believe, is 27-4 against the ACC, and they have half of the top 10. I mean, and right now, there are some projections that have as many as a dozen SEC teams, 12, in the field of 68, which is nuts. And even teams that aren't, like Missouri just beat number 1 Kansas the other day. I mean, this you have to wonder if, the financial aspect of this, that has ran in football for so long with the SEC is caught up in basketball as well. Because you've seen SEC teams invest in coaching, invest in NIL. We've seen that, for example, what Tennessee's been able to do for the portal last year with Connect, this year with Chaz Lanier and Igor Milicic, and all the other transfers that they got. These SEC teams in basketball have invested wisely, and now you're seeing just a lot of really good programs that have come up.
I mean, Alabama, for example, obviously a powerhouse in football, invested into basketball, and now they're ranked 7th.
Mm-hmm.
And you have SEC had more schools ranked before Texas lost to Ohio State. I mean, Texas was a preseason top 25. Right now, I think I counted 9 top 25 teams in the conference. And I think, but will they beat themselves up in season? When you get into conference play, will the SEC schools beat themselves up?
Yeah, and that's the thing. But the good thing with the team being the conference being as strong as it is, every team's gonna be able to afford to drop some, and you're not going to get punished that much in terms of seeding. Because in my view, you can probably afford to lose at least 3 to 4 in conference, and still have a really good shot at the 1 seed or a 1 seed.
And I like
that's what we're going to say.
No, I like the Spencer Young's arguments. Like college basketball, essentially, you would want to be on the top towards the end of the season due to March Madness. Yes, that's true. I mean, regular season is not that it doesn't matter. It's just matter way less than college football, and and if you're at least somewhat in the top, by like late February, you're gonna get in. And of course, there's always the Cinderella stories with the conference championship. Look what NC State did last season. So that's why I don't pay attention really to college basketball until at least conference play starts. And even then, there's maybe 1 or 2, even 3 matchups that you really pay attention to.
Right, like when it comes to Tennessee, right? Like we don't really pay attention to when we play Kentucky and Alabama, teams like that. But there's going to be so many teams that are going to be really interesting this year. Of course, Kentucky, had a weird week last week. They lost to Clemson, but then came back and beat Gonzaga and Seattle in a big comeback win there. It's just it's going to be an exciting year of SEC basketball, and obviously there's not a lot you can take from being number 1, but it's still cool to be number 1, and it's going to be a challenge, right? Because Miami gave them a good test tonight, and then they got to go to Illinois on Saturday. Illinois is unranked, but still got to go to Champaign. That's going to be a hard environment to play in. Frankly, I wouldn't be shocked if we dropped that game because it's on the road, and it's going to be a hostile environment. But if the basketballs get past that, I think they'll be undefeated heading into conference play.
Well, yeah, your last 3 games non-conference are Western Carolina, Middle Tennessee State, and Norfolk State.
Yeah. And to be honest, our non-con hasn't, I think, been the strongest. I mean, our best win is Baylor.
But non-conference basketball doesn't really matter, in my opinion.
But to get to Aaron's point, overall, I don't think it's really that bad, the non-con. I mean, we just played Miami, Syracuse, Baylor. I mean, it's better than you play the teams that Aaron just literally mentioned, Middle Tennessee, Western Kentucky. I mean, it's an improvement.
The Louisville win is pretty good too, considering that they turn around and beat Indiana by 30 in Atlantis, and what was it, West Virginia that y'all beat too down there? So I mean, Louisville's got some quality wins as well. West Virginia is probably
it's the last of the quality wins, considering everybody's hurt now. But yes, the Louisville win turned out to be a pretty good one for the Vols.
Yeah, and because it's on the road, I mean, it's gonna count more than it would at home or on a neutral site. So, and also speaking of the SEC, Arkansas has stormed back from a halftime deficit to take the lead against Michigan in the Jimmy V Classic as well. So the SEC is just continuing. The team, though, I think that's probably feeling the worst is UConn had a bad week a couple of weeks ago at Thanksgiving, losing all 3 of their games in Maui. Last week, Kansas. They were ranked number 1. They lost in Omaha at Creighton and then on the road to their arch rivals at Missouri. I mean, yikes. I mean, granted, it's December once again, so I don't know how good they are, but to me, there's just something off about Kansas with Hunter Dickinson. Like, this doesn't look like a team to me that's going to win it all or has a chance really to win it all.
No, I've always thought Hunter Dickinson is kind of, I mean, I look at Hunter Dickinson the same way most people look at Foul Ming. I mean, he's just bigger than he's just bigger than most of the guys he plays. He's not that. I don't think he's talented. I think he's just bigger than everybody else.
Absolutely. In any case, so it'll be interesting to see how Kansas moves forward from there. Also, just want to shout out on the women's side of things real quick. Lady Vols beat Florida State at Iowa last week. They are now ranked. Kim Caldwell, very impressive so far. Curious to see how they play in SEC play on the women's side of things. But let's quickly go into some NFL real quick. Because, I mean, last week we had a lot of buys. So, I felt like there wasn't a lot of games that happened. But to me, the best game of the week by far was Lions-Packers on Thursday. The Lions won in part because of bold coaching from Dan Campbell, going for it on a 4th and 1 late, got it, and was able to run down the clock to beat the Packers, excuse me. And the Lions seem like they're very much in control for the 1 seed right now. And to me, it just seems like they're the team to beat in the NFC. Like, it's going to be really hard for anyone to go into Detroit and knock them off in the playoffs.
And shout out to their coaching staff for fielding a practice squad defense and still playing well enough to win in the National Football League.
Yeah.
I would contend that Detroit's the team to beat in the league. I think they're way better than Kansas City. Kansas City
I would agree.
Has squeaked by teams, whether it be non-calls or mistakes by the teams they're playing.
Kansas City reminds me a lot of the Pittsburgh Steelers 2020, where they were undefeated for like 11 games, but we all know they weren't this really great team. It's just they were getting by and getting wins, but they weren't like, they're winning convincingly. No.
This isn't like 2009 where you had the Colts and the Saints both undefeated and you knew that was the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, to me, it's going to come down to the Lions and the Eagles. To me, I would be shocked if that wasn't the NFC title game because the Eagles have really hit their stride. Despite a lot of controversy earlier in the year, that team just feels like they've really congealed, especially around Saquon in the backfield. And I forgot who said it earlier in the podcast. It was Rafael Fanati Del Vedove.
Rafael Del Vedove. My great friend Rafael Del Vedove, Rio Branco analyst.
Who won Saquon for MVP. And I really couldn't argue with him on that. Like Saquon he's just been incredible this year.
Yeah, he definitely was incredible. I have some stories about that. Do you, Nick?
Yes. Yeah, I mean the numbers that this guy puts up in fantasy football. My God, my goodness. Yeah, just I guess outside of that game though, I really feel like the other big game of the week was Chiefs and Chargers. You know, what did I say last week? Like the Chargers were gonna keep it really, really close, but they just can't beat the Chiefs. They just can't do it. They lost by 2 though, so hey, that's what the Chargers do against Kansas City. And that's what everyone apparently does against Kansas City. They apparently get lucky bounces too to win.
But how about the other matchup involving LA team? Rams and Bills. What a match. Well, I mean, what a coaching match. I mean, Sean McDermott and Sean McVay. I mean, that was a coaching duo.
To me, that's what the Rams should have looked like all year.
Yeah.
Nakua is hurt most of your Cup. Obviously, he gets in and out of the lineup most of the time with injuries. Like that Rams team is not bad. Kyron Williams is obviously good on the backfield. Matt Stafford is a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and then you have 2 stud wide receivers, and then you have good supplemental wide receivers, like Tutu Atwell. Like
Shout out to my boy Tutu Atwell.
Like their team is not bad. Their defense isn't very good since Aaron Donald retired, but I mean that's a team that to me they're sitting at 7-6. I think they're better than their record.
Yeah, I think the Rams are going to find their way into the playoffs. I have that feeling with that team.
I definitely don't want to be the number 2 seed and facing the Rams. I definitely don't want to be. That's why the Lions are going to fight their hardest out to get the number 1 seed because they definitely don't want to face the Rams in the playoffs.
Like Rams at Eagles would be an unreal matchup in the first round.
Don't sleep on that Vikings team. They're probably going to be the top wild card spot. If you're that 4 seed and you got to play the Vikings coming out, like that's probably a loss.
So like Vikings at Tampa right now would be.
That's an easy win for Minnesota, I think. And then I would say that Green Bay probably squeaks in as the second wild card spot. So then you look at the 3 seed in the playoffs. So who's that? Seattle?
Yeah. So Packers at Seattle.
I think Packers win that too.
And then right now, the 7 seed right now is Washington. Can Washington hang on?
I think so.
So right now, I pull up so we have the NFC that we're discussing. Number 1, Lions. Number 2, Eagles. Number 3, Seattle. But I think they're still up for grabs. Number 4, Tampa. 5, Vikings. 6, Packers. 7, Commanders. 8, Rams. So right now, we would have Eagles, Rams, Seattle, Commanders, Buccaneers, Packers. I mean, I guess the Rams would have been out, right? Would be Eagles, Commanders, Seattle.
Yeah, Rams would be the
Packers.
first team out right now. But they're a game behind for the wild card and game behind for the division.
I would see them winning the division before I see them beating Washington out for the wild card. The NFC East is so bad outside of Washington. I mean, the Commander, let me look up their schedule really quick just because I don't want to speak out of turn.
Yeah, I mean, the Commanders face the Saints on the road, Eagles at home, Falcons at home, and Cowboys on the road. So at least I'll say we can go 2-2, even 3-1.
I'm going 3-1. I think they beat the struggling Saints. I think they lose to the Eagles, the Falcons, who have lost 3 in a row, and the Cowboys are the Cowboys. I mean, we watched what happened. The blocked punt yesterday.
Is it time for Trey Lance? Because I don't think Cooper Rush is it.
Yeah, it's time. Give me Lance. Love Kyle Hurl's boyfriend.
And I'll say this. I mean, you mentioned the Saints and the Commanders game. Derek Carr, again, another injury. I feel so bad for this guy because he was supposed to be this new great quarterback, but the amount of injuries he has, it's just too much.
As Jason would say, Derek Carr is a jag.
Yeah. And the Falcons are so mid, too. Like, they invested that money into Kirk Cousins, and they're still mid like they've always been.
You want to talk about a team that should be good. the Falcons, I mean, they have a good defense. You have Kirk Cousins or Kirk Thuggins, whatever you want to call him, Kirk O'Chains.
Unlike Kirk Cousins, unlike Derek Carr, is not a Jag. He is not just a guy. He's better than that. He's good. Put some respect on that man's name.
Then Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney, Bijan Robinson, like they have talent. They have weapons. It is unbelievable. Kirk Cousins has struggled for sure. But it is unbelievable that they have lost 3 games in a row. Might be 4 games in a row now.
I guess let's go up to the AFC. Let's just see that side of the
Oh, do we have to?
Right. Well, yeah, so obviously KC, Buffalo already in the playoffs. Yeah, the really the only really, really tight division race here is going to be your Steelers and the Ravens coming down the stretch. But even then, the Steelers are up by 2 games. And, the Texans are up by 2 games with the Colts, which was just brutal for y'all. I mean, y'all had 2 really tight games with them.
I don't think those. I don't think there's going to be any changes in the AFC playoffs. I think there's going to be Buffalo, Broncos, Steelers, Chargers, Texans, Ravens. That's it.
Man, if the Bengals just had a defense too, because they just don't have a defense, or if the Dolphins didn't have an injury to Tua throughout the majority of the year.
But don't sleep on that AFC South, because the Colts finish here with the Broncos, Titans, Giants, and Jags. Like that's 4 very, very winnable games. And
well, those are at least 3 wins, because the Titans. I don't know if they could be a peewee team at this point.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, the Texans finished with the Dolphins, Chiefs, Ravens, and then the Titans. Like the Texans are going into their probably hardest stretch of the year, and the Colts are going into the easiest.
Yeah.
So if there was going to be a switch, that would be the one.
So I saw some friends that were freaking out over the Titans game, and I didn't see it because I went and saw Wicked instead, and I think I made the correct choice.
That's the correct choice.
That is the correct.
Nobody wants to watch that bum-ass franchise.
Hey, and Wicked was a fantastic movie. And I saw the play a few years ago in London, and so I made the 100%. I've watched the playoff show, then I went and watched Wicked. Great Sunday afternoon for me. But and I just hate though that that's what it's come to. Because, I haven't sat through and honestly watched a full Titans game in at least 2 months at this point, and I've been much happier for it. So, it just is what it is when it comes to them, because they're so bad. And as good as the Vol season has been, I'm not letting the Titans bring me down until they are worthy.
That's how I felt about the White Sox last year after the Vols won the College World Series. You are not stealing my happiness.
I mean, guys, especially Nick, but Jason too. Could you guys believe it? In January 2021, they would have said Tennessee in the playoffs and Titans, basically done for this, fighting for a higher pick in the draft. Literally done. It would have been unimaginable 3 years ago with the Titans #1 seed in the AFC and the Tennessee Volunteers, a tire fire.
Well, here's even the thing. Even with the Titans being in that fight for a high draft pick, I don't really trust the current administration to make the correct decision. I mean, I just don't. To me, if I'm in charge, I'm probably, if he's there, Travis Hunter probably would be the guy, just because of the versatility he brings, and we need both a receiver and cornerback.
So currently, Tennessee has the 5th overall pick.
I don't know if he'll be there at 5.
Yeah,
he might be. I just know for a fact you don't pull a trigger on a quarterback next year because none of the quarterbacks are good enough.
Next year, not this year. You don't think
the year after.
Guy? Okay.
The year after, I think they will, because it's not necessarily anything to do with Levis. And I do think Levis has played marginally better the past few weeks, but obviously he's still not good. And obviously Sunday was a disaster for Levis.
This year, the Titans need to draft They need to protect. I think that you look at like Nico's draft eligible next year, right?
Mhm.
And so is Arch Manning. Do I think Arch Manning comes out next year? No, but he's another guy that would be draft eligible. I think you got to protect draft linemen. Do what the Bengals and the Colts didn't do. Draft linemen and then prepare to draft the franchise quarterback. I think you got to go with Isaiah Ilson coming out this year. Draft him to protect your quarterback.
Well, I mean, did you see that crap at the end of this first half, though? Like, we have 1 second left. They get the ball back, and then J.C. Latham just completely whiffs on a block, and Levis just gets murdered heading into halftime. It's the most Titans thing I've ever seen. And then, like, in the first half, they go down the field, and they had, like, a great drive going. It was like an 8-minute drive. And then they get to the red zone and just start throwing the ball inexplicably. Despite the fact that Tony Pollard was getting 4 or 5 yards a pop. It just...
Who is in a worse spot right now? Okay, so I'm going to put 4 teams. Who's in the worst spot? The Titans, the Jags, the Giants, or the Cowboys?
Jags.
Did you see the Cowboys block the punt?
I think it's Dallas.
That's true.
Dallas actually had championship expectations compared to the other teams.
Well,
Dallas has a ton of money wrapped up in a quarterback that's not good.
Like, can somebody still explain to me? Like, you make a mistake once, okay. Like, what is the term? Shame me, fool me once, shame
Fool me
on
once,
you.
shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
That's the.
Fool me 3 times, F the peace sign. However that goes. Ask Nick for that one.
Yeah.
But that's to be the motto for the Dallas Cowboys, because like the first Dak contract was questionable, but the second one is inexplicable because we all knew he was a goodish to average quarterback that was, of course, had a really good rookie season, but with being a rookie contract that allowed Dallas to have Zeke and and all those pieces, but until unfortunately, and I don't wish, definitely I wish Jerry Jones still lives happy life. I think he's a tremendous businessman, but as a GM of a football team, he should be, calling his call a day.
His son needs to overrule him more, Gus. I don't know if you've heard this before, but when Johnny Manziel was in the NFL draft, so this is 2013, I believe.
Yeah, I think 2014.
Jerry Jones wanted to draft him, and his son said, "Go to hell, we're not drafting him," and drafted Zach Martin instead, and that turned out to be a brilliant decision.
Yeah, they just need to advance to that next stage.
I remember even Skip Bayless was, pushing that as well.
Think about like that. The Cowboys, they paid Dak Prescott, they paid CeeDee Lamb, they paid Micah Parsons. Like, they're gonna have no money left to pay anybody else. Like,
see, that's what the Bengals are in too, is in that situation as well.
Well, they're just letting T. Higgins go, and then they'll have Jamar and Joe Burrow.
Yeah, T. Higgins to the Colts.
And that's the thing, we had a discussion earlier about the salary cap. And that's the thing about the NFL. If you are smart about the salary cap, you can find a way. Because, like, KC paid, Patrick Mahomes a lot of money, too. And,
but didn't Pat Mahomes restructure his contract to pay more guys? Like, isn't his contract backloaded?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. But I wouldn't be surprised.
But even then, they get good market value out of guys. Like, Travis Kelce's they're not paying him that much. So they spend money on like guys like Pacheco, and then you bring in a glutton of free agent wide receivers. You draft Xavier Worthy. You don't have to pay him very much. Like, their GM. And then it's like you have all that money to pay for your defense. And it works out. They don't score a lot. They just also don't give up very many points.
Absolutely. And I think when it comes to Mahomes and Kelce, also their commercial value as well. All right, real quick. The last thing we're going to do is picks for the week. So Thursday night football, real quick. Rams at 49ers.
Rams. Finally, Sean McVay beats Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, Rams.
Rams.
All right. KC at Cleveland.
Give me the Browns.
I was gonna do it. Now I feel like I can't do it.
The Lord has delivered Jameis from these pick sixes, and Jameis is gonna ball.
I was gonna take Cleveland also. Give me the Browns.
Say Jameis is gonna ball until he throws a pick six to lose the game. Give me KC.
I think the Browns gonna keep it close, but I'll bet KC, but I'll bet the under. I think it's gonna be a field goal difference. KC, but I'll bet the under.
What's the spread?
But minus 4.5.
All right. Bengals at Titans. I'm just gonna go and say Bengals.
Bengals by 1 million.
Bengals by 1 million.
All right. Well, what should I do on Sunday instead of watching the Titans? I feel like it's been a weekly episode of like, okay, what should I do today instead of watching the Tennessee Titans?
Learn how to play the piano. I don't know.
Watch
Literally.
Chelsea.
Let me
There we
see
go.
if the FIFA Club World Cup final is gonna be on Sunday. So maybe it's a better option. Oh, it's on Wednesday. Oh, it's on Wednesday. So I don't know. Soccer wise in Brazil, it's all done.
This is what you need to do. I've heard whispers that you guys have talked about like sitting on here and streaming games, like watching games on here. Watch that game on here. Just give a live reaction, Let's see the life of a Titans fan.
Yeah.
Oh, that would
The
have been
misery.
funny.
All right. Washington at New Orleans.
Washington.
Washington.
Washington, but I'll bet the under.
All right. Ravens at the Giants.
Ravens, and I'll bet the over.
Ravens by 1 million.
Yeah, Ravens.
Did you guys see what Tommy DeVito did the other night though? Paying that girl to flash the Saints.
The OnlyFans model.
What a legend. With that said, I think the Giants lose by 50. Give me Baltimore.
Yeah, Shador Sanders, you are a New York Giant. All right, Cowboys at Panthers.
I mean, really, $74 to watch this game? Who's in right mind is going to pay that?
When you can pay $40 to watch the Ravens?
I mean, I'll definitely pay $27 to watch the Saints and Commanders. At least,
Like, I'll be
of
honest. Like $20 that'll go watch Joe Burrow play is honestly not a terrible deal.
That's actually a good deal.
But anyway, I guess I'll bet the Cowboys.
Panthers.
Carolina.
Can both teams lose?
How funny would be a tie? This game ends in a tie.
There you go. That's my prediction. This game ends in a tie. They just nobody decides who wants to win the game, so they just tie.
And imagine the frustration. Somebody pays $74 to watch a tying game between two losing franchises.
But Carolina, they are playing better, and Bryce Young is starting to look like a competent quarterback. So,
I go with the Panthers to win that. Realistically, honestly.
All right, Jets at Jaguars. This might be the worst matchup of the day.
Give me the Jets.
Jets.
Jags.
Miami at Houston.
Give me Miami.
Give me Miami.
Yeah, give me Miami.
Y'all are crazy. Give me Houston.
No. Come on. Tua's back. Tyreek Hill's playing well again. Devin Achane's playing well. I understand why you picked Houston, though.
All right. Indianapolis
getting
at
too
Denver.
Is that the Sunday night game? What time does that game start?
That's 4:25.
Oh, I was going to say. Good Lord. I hate to say it. Give me the Broncos.
Give me the Colts.
Colts.
I think this will be a really good game, but give me the Broncos. But definitely must win for your playoff hopes for sure. All All right, this one's going to be epic right here, though. Buffalo at Detroit. Man, this one.
Why this game is not the Sunday Night Football game?
Man, that's going to be an epic game. Give me Detroit.
Buffalo.
Detroit. Buffalo just came with a really hard game in California. So, I mean, give me Lions.
Give me Detroit.
All right, another epic game at 425. The Steelers at the Eagles. Man, these are some
Dude, what in the world?
Dude, the Red Zone on Sunday
Red Zone's
afternoon is
going to be
crazy.
unbelievable this weekend.
Jason, I need you to walk me through that streaming thing, especially before this weekend.
I got you.
This is unreal.
Give me the Eagles.
Can we call Philadelphia Derby?
The Pennsylvania
Derby, actually.
In honor of the guy who was arrested yesterday.
It's the Steagles Derby.
Yes, the Steagles Derby. All right.
Shout out to Mr. Bill Murphy.
Yeah,
if you know, you know.
Greatest paper football player in the world.
Hell yeah. That man's a legend.
All right. Give me Pittsburgh. One on the road.
Oh, boy. And then the toilet bowl.
New England at Arizona.
I mean, it's not. It's a somewhat toilet bowl because the Cardinals are still have a little bit of playoff hope. So give me Arizona, but I'll bet the under.
They won't have any more after this weekend. Give me the Patriots.
I only say it's a toilet bowl because the 3 matchups before this have been insane. Give me the Patriots.
I'll take the Cardinals at home. And actually, this one is actually pretty good, too. Tampa Bay at Los Angeles.
Chargers.
I'm going to go Buccaneers on the road.
I appreciate you doing that way. We didn't have a clean sweep.
Yeah. All right, the Sunday night game. This one actually still important. Green Bay in the playoff race and Seattle, the top of the NFC West. So not a bad Sunday night pick.
Green Bay.
It's
Seattle.
not bad, but it definitely isn't great. Green Bay by multiple touchdowns.
Yeah, it should be Buffalo, Detroit, or Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. Should be the Sunday night game. I'll go Seattle, though, at night. The 12th man brings them over the finish line. And then we have a doubleheader on Monday, and I don't know why these are the 2 games. Chicago at Minnesota.
Vikings by 1 million.
Yeah, Vikings by 1 million.
Vikings by 3, and the Bears lose in the most excruciating way possible.
They already did that twice.
Vikings by 2 touchdowns. So I'll bet the under.
And then Falcons at the Raiders. Why is this on Monday Night Football? Give me Falcons.
Atlanta.
I guess some team has to win, so Atlanta.
Well, the Falcons have lost 3 in a row. Give me the Raiders.
Well, guys, I think that is all the time. Unless you guys just want to briefly touch on the MLB real quick. Obviously, we mentioned Juan Soto and Max Fried to the Yankees. I hate that as a Braves fan, but hey.
It was interesting that Juan Soto, from what I heard, did not want to re-sign with the Yankees because the Yankees Stadium security guards had some sort of a trouble with Juan Soto's family. So, but at the end of the day, Steve Cohen is going to throw money because, he knows that he needs to compare to the Dodgers. He's going to have to spend more money. That's just reality.
Right. And for me, for the Braves, I think it's kind of apparent to me that we don't have that kind of money, which feels weird to me because it feels like the Braves should have they should be at least in the ballpark.
Of 720
million? 720 million. I mean, how crazy you sign a 16-year contract? Where does that work in sports? Where a player kept 16 years consistently good? Nowhere.
Yeah, it's insane. And I get what Alex Anthopoulos is doing, right? Because you can't. You got to be smart with how you construct a baseball roster and how it's constructed. And granted, we wanted to get Nathan Eovaldi, but that didn't work either because he's staying in Texas. So
prediction, I think this contract ends up making, like Juan Soto is about to make Bobby Bonilla Day look like the $1 charitable donation you can make at gas stations after your transaction.
That's
Like,
exactly what I thought.
Absolutely. But in any case, I'll be curious to see how that develops over the offseason and how they were going to even pay for all this. Because, I mean, with the MLB, right, with all these TV problems, I don't know. But in any case, that is everything. What an episode.
3 hours.
2 countries of America's All Sports. Hey, it's December, football playoffs everywhere, and everything else going on. And not 1 second spent on the NBA. So, just goes to show how irrelevant they are.
Here's my 1 second. I had a blast in Chicago. Go Pacers.
Go Pacers.
Absolutely. The NBA Cup, irrelevant. I don't know what's going on there. But shout out to the Pacers.
Yeah, nobody cares about
And
the NBA Cup.
Absolutely. All right. For
Only if we
Aaron
win.
Young, for Jason Wyrick and Gustavo Tomazeli, I'm Nick Hill. Thank you so much for joining us for the only sports podcast to talk Brazilian and American sports. Have a great night.
And congratulations, Botafogo, for winning the Brazilian championship.